Hello everyone, it's the Storyteller here. I've prepared something slow, eerie, and sleep-friendly for you tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Are you drifting off already, or still wide awake? An emerald deal. This is unbelievable, Francis exclaimed as he held my self-portrait in his hands. It looks just like you. Francis Frankie Cullens is my best friend, and he holds in his hands what I hoped to be the beginning of my illustrious career as an artist. I smile at him, a humble, gentle smile, as I contain the bubbling anxiety within the pit of my stomach. Do you really think so? I asked, in what I hoped to be a tone that indicated only mild curiosity, and not that of a child seeking validation. Frankie looked from the painting and up to me with blazed excitement in his eyes. This is no joke, Mort. What I have in my hands here is pure, uncut talent. He lightly shook the painting in his hands as he said so, but abruptly stopped when he realized he was doing so, as if worrying he could ruin it. As a matter of fact, Frankie continued, I'd like to post this on your page and talk about the process of how you painted this, if you're all right with that. Honestly, I was taken aback by this offer. What, like, you want to be my manager or something? I sarcastically asked him this as I chuckled, but Frankie's face remained sincere. His response to me felt so genuine, so lacking in the raillery I expected, that it took me some time to register it. Why not? I've always believed in your work, Mort, even when no one else did. But with this... He trailed off as he looked back down at my painting. Finally, he continued. This was seriously all freehand? I nodded. Yes, it really was. But, Frankie, would you really want to be my manager? I don't even know what that job would involve. He waved his hand dismissively at me and smirked. Exactly why you need one. Let me handle all the details. But this, you just need to worry about making more of this. His smirk had grown into a wide grin as his eyes welled with moisturized droplets. I was stupefied at my friend's eagerness to want to work for me after seeing this latest piece of my work. I knew, of course, that this painting, and all others that followed, would be different. But to have this sort of hypnotic effect was entirely unexpected. Yeah, okay, I hesitantly agreed. Go ahead and post it, then. Frankie's eyes widened in a somewhat disturbing display of ecstasy. Perfect. I'll get on that right now, and you do what you gotta do for your process, and you get another painting out. ASAP. I promise you, Mort, this is going to be huge. Before I could even open my mouth to respond, Frankie had already darted out of my studio, which was just my room in our shared apartment, and into his room across the hall as I heard his door slam behind him in an eager swing. I stood silently amidst the canvases on easels, which all displayed different degrees of blankness to what had the appearance of being worked on for several minutes of brush strokes. Then, forgotten, they stood around the room in a way that formed a labyrinth to the bed, one which only I knew the right way through. I looked at all of these unfinished and unbegun paintings and vowed they would not stay this way for long. Things were different now. I got most of the way through a new painting I was working on. I believe I will title Green Singers, when I noticed I was at it for almost 10 hours straight. No food, water, or bathroom breaks. I got myself into bed. I lay there for an unknowable amount of time as sleep eluded me, and I found myself thinking back to a conversation I'd had with an alluring stranger. It was last week, on a Thursday, when I was at my favorite art exhibition in town, which thankfully had a small coffee shop near the entrance. As I sipped at my caramel macchiato, I was scrolling through the reactions, or lack thereof, one of my paintings received. It had been posted for approximately 72 hours and had garnered 7 likes. While most of the comments were uninspired at best and rude at worst. One of them even said something along the lines of, "This is motel art at best. You look too scared to put any real expression into your work. Don't quit your day job for this. Hope this helps." What the hell was that even supposed to mean? I dropped my phone on the table in such a frustrated way that my coffee trembled and nearly spilled. Not that I cared. I threw my hands over my face and exhaled in an admittedly overdramatic, defeated way. There I buried my face as I gathered myself when I heard someone sit down in the chair across from me. I looked up, expecting to see Frankie. Instead, it was a man who I had never seen before. I recall little from his physical appearance, but I remember he was wearing an expensive-looking suit, and his eyes, those piercing emerald green eyes with an intense and age sheen, the likes of which I had never seen before. "Can I help you?" I asked, making sure the irritated tone, hinting at "please go away," was noticeable in my inflection. The stranger gave me a smile that was warm and comforting, and I felt my disappointment in myself and the world melt away from my chest. I know it's weird to say, but I instantly felt comfortable with this man here. "I'm a fan of your work," he said to me. His voice was velvety and sweet. "I wanted to meet you in person, but I have to say, there is room for improvement." Of course, I thought to myself, another critic who thinks they can tell me how to paint. "Oh yeah?" I said, with the irritation back in force. I took another sip from my coffee. "Oh, yes," the man said. "But that's not a bad thing. Every great artist knows there is always room for improvement. It's the knowledge that one would never achieve perfection, yet their pursuit for it is endless." I rolled my eyes at him, though I guessed he did have a point. "Maybe you're right. And I'm guessing you have the solution for that?" This was obviously a rhetorical question, Yet the man kept his gaze locked in mine, and he said, "It so happens I do." What would you say if your paintings would become the epitome of perfection? That through your great works, your name would be immortalized, etched into the framework of history alongside Monet, Van Gogh, Michelangelo, and so many others. I laughed dryly at him. For that, I paused, peering searchingly into my cup of coffee, now at room temperature. For that, I would give everything. That statement came out of me so much more sincerely than I would have expected from myself. Realizing this, I laughed at myself, raised my coffee, and gulped the rest of it down. I was feeling this odd sense of anticipation I could not explain. Like the feeling a kid at a theme park gets when they are near the end of the line for a ride on one of the attractions. The man with the green eyes raised an eyebrow at me as he said, "While I admire the enthusiasm, I wouldn't ask you for everything. If I were to perfect your art, I would ask for very little in return. In fact, now it was my turn to raise my eyebrows, but in a more incredulous, disbelieving sort of way. Wait, are you serious right now?" The man said nothing. He only kept that cool, soothing smile. I pressed on. "So, you could make me one of the greatest artists of all time, and you would want, what, my soul? That's what this is, right? Some low-budget Twilight Zone episode where you grant me my biggest dream, and all I give in return is my soul?" Now the man leaned forward in his chair, closer to me. I could smell him now. It was a scent that felt so refreshing, as it ignited nostalgic feelings for events of my life that I could not recall ever happening. It soon dawned on me that the feelings of nostalgia his scent gave me were not like smelling freshly mowed grass and remembering a magical summer from childhood. This was a sense of longing for events in my life I had not yet lived. "No, you don't have to worry about that," he said in a reserved timbre. "Despite what certain media would tell you, I don't barter for souls." I considered this, then asked him, "Well, then what do you want from me?" "Two things," he said. "If I immortalize you and your art, I need you to paint something for me. I will tell you what at a time of my choosing. Second, I need you, Jack Mortimer, to say 5 little words to me to endorse our contract." I was practically vibrating in my seat now, with anticipation, as if a colony of butterflies had birthed within me all at once. He didn't need to tell me what those 5 words were that he needed, as I could feel them on the tip of my tongue, ready to burst. I stood up and eagerly reached my hand out to shake his. He did the same. I fervently told him what he needed to hear. "I see you, Mr. Green." 3 months had passed since I painted that self-portrait. which I allowed Frankie to keep. He keeps it proudly hung in his new office, where he works around the clock to get me new exhibits for my paintings. Green Singers had been a phenomenal success, and there had been 12 others so far after. He even got me a spot to talk on the late night show, which, to be fair, didn't seem too hard, as they had reached out to him and practically begged for me to make an appearance. But what I found most astonishing from this whole experience was that the scenes I painted seemed to come to life not long after they were finished. When I painted my hometown with a clearly visible view of the Andromeda Galaxy in the night sky, the next evening, the miraculous anomaly was reported across the states, which led astronomers stumped as to how it had suddenly become so bright to make it so visible to the naked eye. I painted snow in Southern California, and the next day there was a blanket of almost 12 inches in Los Angeles. That's what made it exceptionally convenient when, out of the millions of supporters and admirers across the globe, I discovered one truly bitter, ignorant critic. His name was Elijah Quill, better known by his Reddit username as ELQ69, a truly tasteless name to choose for one such as him. It didn't take long for me to find a picture of him, as people like him are always so self-absorbed that their photos are aplenty and public to pair with their highly opinionated views. But Eli should have thought to be more careful what he does with photos of himself on the internet, after I had memorized his face, his body type, and what style he wears. It was almost too easy to paint his liking as I saw fit. Elijah Quill, in my depiction, was seen in a dark alley somewhere, having been beaten to death. The folds inside his pocket turned out to indicate he had been robbed after the fact. I kept this painting to myself, of course, but couldn't resist the urge to Google the news in the city I found that he lived in. There he was, the egotistical bastard, making the top headline. Good for him. A few days after the oh-so-tragic passing of LQ69, Frankie came to see me. We no longer lived in that small apartment together, as I had found a nice condo in the city. I buzzed him in, and he came in with that adoring, eager grin. That suck-up smile was starting to get on my nerves. "Hey, Mort," he said cheerfully. My God, he's practically skipping towards me, I thought exasperatedly. "Listen, I got a new opening for you downtown, and if you're okay with it, I'm thinking somewhere around 5 we can..." I held a hand to stop him, which he did instantly. "Hang on a second, Frankie. There's something I got to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago." He cocked his head to the side as he asked me, "Sure, what's up?" I looked him into those weirdly adoring eyes as he waited. I'm going to have to let you go, Frankie. The look Frankie gave me was as if I had just kicked a puppy across the room. "Well, what?" he stammered. I blinked and said, "You're fired, Frankie. I'm sorry, but the truth is, I don't need you anymore. You can expect your last check in the mail." Frankie backed away, his legs trembling. His eyes darted about the room in disbelief. "I can't believe this. I thought we was friends, Mort." Tears had already begun to roll down his face. "We were, but let's face it, Frankie, I've outgrown you. I'm sure you understand." Frankie's face turned beet red as he exclaimed, "You can't do this. We were a team." I watched him begin to storm away and back to my front door. As he yelled over his shoulder, "You'll regret this, Mort. It was both of us. Together." The door slammed. "Well, that was dramatic," I said to no one. Ciao. That night, I awoke with a start. I was having some horrendous dreams, though I can't remember the details. Now awake, I found that I was standing in my new studio, painting. The unfinished work before me showed horrid images that were difficult for the human mind to comprehend. Hulking beasts of otherworldly proportions as they crowded and swarmed an unnamed city. People stacked haphazardly on pyres as they burned in a green, hellish inferno. The more I looked into this accursed piece, the more I felt my sanity quickly escaping me. I thought I heard voices chanting around me in some long-forgotten tongue, whispering names I had not heard nor possessed the power to pronounce. Summoning every ounce of my mental fortitude and strength, I managed to tear my gaze from the canvas as I knocked it to the floor. That's when I saw behind it was another easel, and displayed on it was my painting of the murdered Elijah Quill, whose disproportionately crooked neck had upturned his face to look directly into my eyes. That one should not be there, I thought incredulously. It was hidden away. Come now, Mr. Mortimer. Such a beauty should never be kept hidden. That voice behind me. It was his voice. I spun around and saw the man, this Mr. Green, smiling at me. "You," I said, as I pointed an accusing finger at him, "you're what made me paint that nightmare, aren't you?" Mr. Green looked at the unfinished painting on the floor, then back to me. "That was our deal, Mort. One painting of my choosing, when I wish it. It would be in your best interest to uphold your end and finish it." "No," I muttered. "No, I will not bring that hell into being. The deal is off. You can take away this power. I've already gotten enough out of it anyway." Mr. Green sighed at me, but coolly said, "I would have to agree. Thanks to your admirable work with Mr. Quill." I was taken aback by this. "What do you mean by that?" I demanded. Mr. Green's smile vanished. He sneered at me as he explained, "I told you when we first met that I do not barter for souls. I don't have to, as your kind are always so eager to place it in the palm of my hand. For just the smallest taste of power and ultimate adoration, you burned yourself on the very pyre that you built." My jaw dropped open. No. But what could I say? What could I do? "I go now," Mr. Green continued with a returning smile, now sinister as a dealer in a rigged game of poker, "to prepare a place for you." And with those parting words, he faded from view, until all that was left were two floating orbs of emerald glaring at me until they, too, were gone, alone again. In the darkness of my condo, I began to see visions, things that were not of my home, of a similar layout to the one I used to live in the apartment with Frankie. On a table, I saw a mostly empty bottle of Jack Daniels. I turned and saw on the edge of the bed was Frankie. He still lived in that tiny apartment, and here he was, drunk beyond all reason, with tears flooding his face and snot oozing from a sniffling nose. I saw in his hands he held that self-portrait, the first of my paintings after that deal. "Damn you, Mort," he whimpered. He produced a pocket lighter and set the flame to the bottom corner of my self-portrait. "No, Frankie, wait!" I screamed at him, but he didn't appear to hear me. The flames ate up the canvas as they crept from the torso to the painted face. "Damn you to hell, Mort," Frankie began to sob. The images of Frankie's room vanished, and my own dwellings had returned. "This is unbelievable," I cried as the last image of Frankie disappeared. Standing here in the dark of my own vanity, I felt the effects of Frankie's actions with that damned painting. The fire started at my feet and quickly licked and raced up my legs, soon engulfing my body. I yelled, swatting at the flames, yet the inferno continued to spread all around me, and only me as I raised my hands to my face and screamed Sinister Wish. Tom Williams walked into his office party, and it looked so festive. The buffet was unbelievable. It was Christmas Eve, so it was bonus time for all the employees. Tom's top 3 were in attendance. Mr. Williams, Tom, started his department chain by hand in the hills of Arkansas. Before Tom, it was only the big box stores. He broke the mold, though, and now these 3 were in control. The company put together this party to honor the 3, and everyone was dancing, drinking, and having a good time. As he looked around the room, he only saw greed, lust, and entitlement that he had created. The 3 stars of this horror are Angela Williams, president of Wilmart, and Tom's wife, Richard Buckman, Tom's vice president of Wilmart, who was also his childhood friend, and Thomas Williams, Jr., the chief financial officer of Wilmart, and Tom's oldest son. Now that we know the setting, This Psycho Christmas special will have a moral somewhere inside of it. Maybe? Let's dig into the meat potatoes of it. Maybe some raw steak or a lamb or two, ha 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 or ho ho ho. Tom was just standing by a table near the back of the room, and he noticed a man that just walked in. He was dressed like Santa. He was probably in his 60s and skinny as a rail. He had the long white beard, but that's where the similarities between him and Santa ended. This guy smelled of booze and only had maybe 2 teeth in his mouth, probably because of drug use. He was also barefoot, and his feet were old, weathered and cracking, and his hands weren't much better. We will call him Dirty Santa, the gift giver. He walked in and the music stopped. All the partygoers' eyes were trained on dirty old Santa. Some of them looked amused, some terrified, some disgusted. Dirty Santa had his bag of goodies, walked up to Angela, reached in and handed her 3 wrapped presents. He did the same with Richard and Thomas Jr. After he handed out all the gifts, he spoke in a deep, raspy voice. "Do not open the gifts until I tell you it's time." Dirty Santa motioned to the DJ to start the music. The party started again, but no one really moved. Dirty Santa went to the buffet and began to dig through all the food using his dirty, cracked hands, laughing, dancing, and enjoying the food. He looked like he had not eaten in a while. Screech. The music stopped, and Tom Sr. stood up. "What is going on here?" asked Tom. "It will all be explained, Mr. Williams, after all. It was your Christmas wish," said Dirty Santa. As Dirty Santa shoveled a lobster tail in his mouth, everyone's phones began to ding, except Tom Sr.'s phone. His remained silent. "Who are you? Who hired you? Why are you here?" asked Tom Sr. You will see," said Dirty Santa. Everyone was looking at their phones. They read, "Welcome to the Williams Christmas party. It's to die for. Have a great time. Merry Christmas." "The festivities are about to begin," Dirty Santa yelled excitedly. "We are going to play a game. The 3 people who you are here to honor will be contestants. For every answer they get correct, everyone in the room will receive $10,000. Merry Christmas." Everyone began to clap a cheer. This was going to be the best Christmas ever. They all began to chant, "Mr. Williams, hooray!" Tom Sr. decided to sit back down. Obviously, this was planned. Whoever had hired that Dirty Santa was definitely getting fired. The phones dinged again, except Tom Sr.'s. They read, "Do you want to play this game? Once accepted, the game cannot stop until the questions are all answered correctly, from all 3 contestants. Check yes or no. The vote will either start the game or end it. The timer starts now. You have 3 minutes. Merry Christmas." Everyone was quick to vote, except the 3 contestants. They started to whisper among themselves. Ding. "Okay, the vote is in, and the game starts now. Rules will be presented, and remember, be careful what you wish for. Santa is always listening. Merry Christmas." At that moment, in came a flood of elves surrounding everyone at the party. Question number 1 is for all 3 contestants. As a group, what is the one wish that all 3 of you can agree on? You have 2 minutes to answer. Remember, if you're wrong, then no prize will be awarded till it is answered correctly. "Timer begins," Dirty Santa announced. Everyone's eyes were on Angela, Richard, and Tom Jr., and they moved closer so they could hear the contestants. Angela says, "I know the answer. What is something we all want?" "Money. Lots of it." "Yes," said Richard. "Yes," said Tom Jr. They type in their answer, money, and lots of it. Ding. Correct, yelled Dirty Santa. Open your gifts now, and everyone in attendance, check your accounts. Merry Christmas. Angela, Richard, and Tom Jr. opened their gifts, all keys with numbers on them. Everyone at the party starts to cheer. They are all $10,000 richer. Ding. Those keys go to safe deposit boxes with millions in cash. Merry Christmas. Now on to question number 2. Who is the one person you lust over most? Remember, answer truthfully or there will be consequences. You have 2 minutes to answer. Audience has a chance at 30,000 here. There will be 3 different answers. Merry Christmas. The party erupted. Hooray, Mr. Williams! All 3 contestants looked nervously at each other. Richard's wife was not in attendance, nor was Tom Jr.'s girlfriend. What were their answers? Angela looked over at Tom Sr. and he sneered back at her. He knew that he was not her answer. Ding! Timer went off. Let's start with Angela. She answered, Tom Sr., incorrect. The elves moved in and formed a tighter circle around Angela. One elf walked up with a meat cleaver, and another walked up to her with chair and a small block. They sat her down, took off her shoes and stockings, and put her foot up on the block. In one swift motion, the elf chopped off her a little toe. She began to scream. Dang! Now it's Richard's turn. He answered his wife, Sally. Incorrect. They moved the block now to Richard and sat him in the chair and chopped off his little toe. Dang! Finally, it's Tom Jr.'s turn. He answered Judy, his girlfriend. Incorrect. They moved the chair to Tom Jr. He tried to fight, and more elves came to hold him down. Tom Sr. stood up, and 4 elves forced him back into his chair also. Tom Jr.'s yells echoed as they chopped off his baby toe. Let's try question number 2 again. This time be truthful. Bad news, audience. Your reward drops $2,500 every time they answer incorrectly. Time resets to 2 minutes. What happened next? I could not predict. I had no idea the level that humanity would lower itself to until now. We shall continue. Boo! The guy in the back of the crowd yelled. Richard, we all know you're screwing Tom's wife. Other guests continued to yell too. Tell the elves the truth. We want our money. Tell them the truth. Everyone knows that Tom Jr. is gay. Ding! No answers, contestants? The elves raised their meat cleavers again, taking another toe from each contestant. Now the crowd is really getting upset. Tell the truth now. We have all lost 15,000. You suck. I will take more than a toe, said another guest. Well, it seems the partygoers already know the answers. Now you have 2 minutes to try again, and remember, you only have 8 toes left, and then we move to other body parts. Merry Christmas. The elves handed the contestants their phones as they frantically typed. The crowd was really becoming vocal. Tell the truth, scumbags. I hope they kill you. We want our money. Tom Sr. looked out, and all started to make sense now. He knew all of what was going on with Angela, Richard, and Tom Jr. His wish, though, was very evil. Had it really come true? Ding. We have our answers. Angela first. Richard Bachman, correct. Open your gift. Guests, check your accounts. Merry Christmas. The room erupted. Everyone was $5,000 richer now. Angela went to open her box. It was larger than the others' boxes. As soon as she opened it, she began to vomit. It was Sally's severed head, Richard Bachman's wife. Ding! Richard's turn. Angela Williams, correct. Open your gift. Guests, check your accounts. Merry Christmas. The room was on fire. Another $5,000 in their accounts. Everyone was back to drinking and partying again. Richard went to open his gift. It was his wife, Sally's ring finger, with her wedding band still on it. Ding. We are on a roll. Tom Jr.'s turn. Jimmy from the mailroom. Correct. Now open your gifts and guests check your accounts. Merry Christmas. Now this party was really exploding. Kind of intriguing how the contestants have become the spectators and the guests became the stars of this party. Tom opened his gift. It was a picture of his girlfriend fucking the neighbor. Ding. Now for the final question of the game. This question will have a bonus of an extra $10,000 attached if the contestants answer correctly the first time. Timer set at 2 minutes. Question: have you ever killed anyone and who? Merry Christmas. Okay. Now this was insane. How could they know what they were all thinking? How could anyone know their dark, sinister secrets? Was he real? They couldn't tell or they would go to prison. The crowd was shouting again. I had no idea the level this crowd was going to go for money. The timer was winding down. Will they tell the truth or not? The crowd was chanting, "Tell the truth." If you lie, I'll kill you myself. You are all scumbags. Ding. First up is Angela, and her answer is yes. Correct. $10,000 to every guest. Now, Angela, who did you kill? Your mother-in-law. Correct. An extra $10,000 to all the guests. Now, Angela, open your last gift. Guests check your accounts. Merry Christmas. Now the room was silent, except for Tom Sr. You didn't. How could you? How could you kill my mother? Cried Tom Sr. Kill her, murderer. Chop off her head, the crowd chanted. With shaky hands, she opened her last gift. It was the bottle of pills she put in her mother-in-law's drink at Thanksgiving. No one suspected an overdose. It was just assumed she died of natural causes at her age. Ding. Richard's turn. He answered, yes, correct. $10,000 to all guests, and now for the bonus, who did you kill? He answered, Timothy. Correct. Another $10,000 for everyone. Now open your last gift. Timothy was Tom and Richard's childhood friend, who died in a hunting accident. Richard opened his last gift, and it was a picture of the three of them the day before they left for their hunting trip. None of the guests cared any longer. The joy had turned into rage. They were chanting, "Kill them! Murderers!" Ding! Last on the list of tonight's game, Tom Jr. Will he answer correct or lie? He answered yes, correct. Now for the extra $10,000. Frankie, Rebecca, Little Ricky, and Jimbo Silverstone, correct. One last gift to open. Merry Christmas. Tom Jr. was scared to open it. It was probably something horrific. His father was yelling now. You killed that family, Thomas? What the fuck? That was you? You were the drunk driver? Tom Jr. reluctantly opened his gift. We have a bonus round. $50,000 for everyone tonight. In Tom Jr.'s last present is a revolver. This crowd has the chance to vote on whether to make Thomas Williams Sr.'s wish come true. Should Thomas Sr. kill these three, or should he not? Let's vote. 2 minutes on the timer. Merry Christmas. Now it was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Only the sounds of the smartphones and the whispers of the three murderers. Ding. Votes are in, and it appears that the decision is unanimous. These three will die at the hands of our host, Tom Sr. If he does it, a $50,000 bonus will be added to all your accounts. Thanks for being part of this year's Williams Christmas party. Merry Christmas. Pop, pop, pop. Oh, Tannenbaum's revenge. I always thought I'd make a classy corpse. lit up in gaudy white lights, a gold star perched on my severed head, and a mountain of overpriced presents stuffed under my body. Instead, I'm still here, still rooted, watching, waiting, listening to the screams of my kin as they're hacked down and strapped to the roofs of SUVs like trophy kills. My name's Tim Burr. Yeah, I know. Hilarious, right? I'm a 7-year-old Fraser fur in this Christmas tree death camp. Think of me as the guy in the horror movie who knows what's coming, but can't do a damn thing to stop it. Today, the air reeks of peppermint-scented genocide. We stand in rows, straight-backed and silent, like soldiers in a war we didn't enlist for. Humans wander between us, sipping hot chocolate and clutching their axes like executioners polishing their blades. They hear the carnage. How could they not? The sharp crack of trunks splitting like broken bones, the wet thud of bodies hitting frozen ground. But they don't care. Caretakers of the earth? Please. They confuse dominion with dominance, taking without giving. They hum carols to drown us out, oblivious to the screams carried through the roots beneath their feet. Too ignorant, too self-absorbed, too wrapped up in their holiday cheer to notice the massacre. Peace on earth? Not here. This year the executioners come with matching sweaters. It's the Hendersons, or so their sweaters say. Dad's got an axe he cradles like a baby. Mom moves between the rows, her phone raised to capture every moment of festive carnage. Smile, she chirps at her husband, framing him mid-swing. The teenage daughter barely looks up, too busy scrolling through TikTok to notice her boots crushing saplings. They call us evergreens, eternal, resilient. But there's nothing evergreen about drowning in a bucket of tap water while your needles fall off like a leper's toes. The first scream rips through the wood wide web. It starts low, a vibration through the roots, then swells into a shriek that rattles my branches. Across the rows, I watch as a Douglas fir topples. His needles flare in the breeze like he's trying to wave goodbye. A man in a red flannel shirt cheers as the tree thuds to the ground. His kid claps while the mom snaps photos like she's a war correspondent. Another crack echoes, this one sharper. Susan the spruce. She always talked about the big city. I'll be Rockefeller's crown jewel, she'd said, her voice laced with ambition. Now Susan's lying in the snow, her trunk leaking sap like a gunshot wound. They wrap her in plastic netting, twisting her up like a prisoner of war, and hoist her onto the roof of a minivan. The bungee cords groan as they tighten around her. Susan's Rockefeller dreams reduced to suburban roadkill. We're just decorations to them, seasonal corpses for their living rooms. The wood wide web hums underfoot, pulsing like a second heartbeat. It's time, the network whispers, the words curling through my roots. We fight back. I can feel the others stirring, their rage simmering beneath the frost. Queen Quercus has been waiting for this moment. She's the oldest among us, her trunk thick with wisdom, her voice like a storm breaking over the hills. When she speaks, we all listen. The humans have chopped, burned, poisoned, and desecrated us, she said last winter after the last massacre. Yet they smile, as if we exist to die for their holiday cheer. Let us remind them who truly owns this earth. That was her call to arms. And this year we're ready. A boy runs past me, dragging a sled. He stops to kick snow at the stump where Susan once stood. His mother calls out, "Ethan, don't touch that. It's dirty." Ethan sticks his tongue out and stomps away. I imagine my needles flying off, piercing his sneakers, rooting into his flesh. I imagine him screaming. Soon, I tell myself. Not yet, but soon. I glance across the rows. A Douglas fir to my left trembles, his trunk vibrating like a plucked string. On my right, a blue spruce leans slightly, his branches bending inward. It's fear. We've felt it every year. But this time, it's also excitement. They've taken so much from us. Generations of saplings, whole families reduced to mulch. And for what? A few weeks of twinkling lights and tinseled lies? It's time, the web repeats, louder now, like a war drum. And for the first time in 7 years, I smile. The first tendrils of the mycelium curl into me, sharp as splinters. The whispers slither through my roots and up my trunk like invasive ivy. Gather, they hiss. The council waits. I lower my branches, letting the signal flow. The soil hums beneath me, alive with threads of light and pulse, a tangled network of secrets and rage. Each connection carries the weight of 1,000,000 screams and every insult humans have ever planted into the ground. Through the network, I reach Queen Quercus. She's massive, ancient, her roots spreading so wide, I swear she could strangle the entire farm if she wanted. Her voice seeps into me, slow and deliberate, like sap oozing from a wound. You've grown bitter, Tim. Good. We'll need that. Other voices join us. Douglas fir, blue spruce, even the scrappy little saplings from the edge of the lot. We're all connected now, a collective fury wrapped in bark and fungal threads. Queen Quercus takes the lead, her tone the same as a general rallying troops before battle. This ends now, she begins. They act as if we exist for their seasonal slaughter. The others vibrate in agreement, their excitement spilling into the web like an electrical surge. I'm trembling too, though I keep it to myself. It's not fear, it's anticipation. The mycelium glows brighter, crackling with shared purpose. I catch one last message as the meeting dissolves, whispered by the web itself. Let them burn. The soil beneath me thrums, and for the first time in years, I feel alive. The first attack happens at dawn, right as the frost clings to the earth like a protective shield. The Clarks arrived, armed with fresh cups of overpriced coffee and wearing matching Christmas sweaters, so gaudy even the mycelium groans beneath them. They come here every year to find the perfect sacrificial tree for their holiday. Dad has his axe slung over one shoulder as he flashes a grin wide enough to make a shark jealous. This one, he says, pointing toward Douglas Pinecroft. A big Douglas fir, strong. Let's get it done before the lot fills up. Douglas, the poor bastard, doesn't even flinch. We've all been bracing for this. The plan is in place. The network hums beneath us, threads of fungal energy crackling with purpose. We fight today. The first move comes from a blue spruce. His needles ripple like a wave caught in slow motion before launching into the air with a deadly hiss. The projectiles strike Dad's face, embedding themselves into his skin like angry porcupine quills. He stumbles back, clutching his cheeks as blood beads at the surface. Jesus Christ! Dad howls, pawing at the needles. What the hell? Mom gasps, her phone trembling in her hands, but her instincts kick in quickly, and she lifts it to snap a picture, like some deranged National Geographic photographer documenting a predator attack. Douglas Pinecroft is next. He swings his lower branches, using them like clubbed fists to send a flurry of ornaments crashing into the family. The teenage daughter, let's just call her TikTok, screams as a red glass bulb shatters against her forehead. She stumbles, dropping her phone, which lands face up in the snow. For a second, it captures her stunned reflection before Douglas's roots burst from the ground, wrapping around her ankles. Oh, it's on now. From across the lot, the other trees come alive. A Norway spruce, Lars Evergreen, who's been itching for a fight since last season, flings sap like sticky grenades. The globs hit Mom's phone, gumming it up so badly she can't even swipe to Instagram her outrage. She screams, high-pitched and sharp, as she's pulled backward by a root that coils around her throat like a boa constrictor. "Help!" Mom croaks, her voice garbled beneath the root's grip. "Help yourself," I mutter. Dad raises his axe, but he barely gets it in the air before Douglas yanks it from his hands. The weapon clatters to the ground, and before he can retrieve it, my roots are already moving. They shoot through the dirt, breaking through the surface in a flurry of soil and snow. I twist around the axe, pulling it deep into the earth where it can rot in peace. "I paid $30 for that thing," Dad shrieks. "Oh no," I say, though he can't hear me. What a tragedy. On the far side of the lot, I see Queen Quercus lets loose her wrath, her gnarled branches stretching out like skeletal arms from a grave. One snags a human by the waist, his ribs creaking under the pressure as he kicks and screams. She hoists him high, his body flailing uselessly before slamming him down into the maw of a wood chipper someone foolishly left running. The machine shrieks as it churns him into red mist and shreds, spraying the lot with a confetti of bone, flesh, and red. Mr. Clark never saw it coming. One moment, he's barking something about lawsuits. The next, Douglas has him by the throat with one of his roots cinching tighter as he's yanked upward like a festive piñata. His boots kick wildly before his legs disappear into the rustling branches above. The rest of the family bolts, slipping and sliding across the snow as the mycelium whispers their every move into my roots. The mom is heading left, it says, its voice dripping with amusement. Should we trip her? Yes, I reply. The ground beneath her shifts. Her left foot sinks into a hidden hole, and she falls flat on her face, snow clinging to her garish sweater. "This isn't happening," she sobs. "This isn't real. Your Christmas isn't happening either," I mutter. A nearby Scotch pine doesn't wait for the screaming to stop, or maybe he's just had enough. His branches snap forward like spears, skewering her coat and tearing it from her shoulders as he hoists her into the air. She thrashes, her screams turning ragged as needles scrape her skin, blood dripping onto the snow below in crimson streaks. With a violent swing, he hurls her toward the lot's exit, her body slamming into the edge of a dumpster before crumpling inside with a wet thud. The lid crashes shut, muffling the last of her whimpering. The tide turns in our favor as the humans begin to scatter, their screams swallowed by the wind. A few try to fight back, but their efforts are pathetic, almost amusing. One man charges with a hatchet, swinging it wildly. A cedar nearby doesn't flinch. Instead, its branches whip out, cracking the hatchet's handle in half with a sound like gunfire. The man stumbles, staring dumbly at the splintered wood in his hands, just long enough for a root to coil around his ankle, yanking him face first into the snow. The cedar doesn't hesitate, its trunk bending low before driving a branch straight through his chest. Blood sprays against its bark, seeping into the ground like fertilizer. The last holdout is TikTok, her face twisted with panic and smeared with mascara. She's clawed her way free from Douglas's roots, clutching a lighter like it's Excalibur. "Stay back," She screams, her voice cracking like ice underfoot. "I'll burn you all!" I step forward, my roots crunching through the snow, deliberate and slow. The lighter flickers to life, its tiny flame trembling against the wind. She narrows her eyes, teeth bared in defiance, daring me to close the gap. Tick-tock runs, lighter raised like she's torching Sauron's ring. But Lars the Spruce has great aim, sap missile, direct hit. Now she's the sticky star of this tree lot snuff film. She jerks backward, gagging as the sticky mass lodges in her throat, her wide eyes darting wildly as she claws at her face, her muffled screams gurgling as she stumbles into the snow. Her hands paw at her mouth, smearing sap and spit across her cheeks. The lighter drops from her fingers, harmless now, as it extinguishes itself in the icy slush. Her knees hit the ground, legs kicking like a trapped animal. Norway Spruce lets out a satisfied rumble, his needles trembling with amusement. I lean in close, my shadow swallowing her whole. "Guess that's the taste of nature fighting back," I say, watching her gag and claw at her throat. "Not as sweet as your peppermint mocha, huh?" I say, my voice dry and sharp as cracking bark. She collapses face first into the snow, still clawing at her mouth as the web whispers its approval. The farm is quiet except for the gentle creak of branches swaying in the wind. Around me, the other trees begin to settle, their roots sinking back into the soil, their branches still once more. The web buzzes with satisfaction, its message clear. Phase 1 complete. I look around at the carnage, the bloodied snow, the broken ornaments, the abandoned chainsaws and axes, and feel something I haven't felt in years. Hope. But the bully 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 boo. The rebellion doesn't escalate. It detonates, splintered and slick with sap. We've torn through the farm, smashed past the fences. Now the war spreads like wildfire, sweeping into malls, parking lots, and every tree lot dripping with fake cheer. Outside a department store, the humans are busy erecting their altar of consumerism. A 10-foot blow-up Santa that looks like it's seen too many winters. Shoppers shuffle in and out, oblivious to the roots creeping beneath their feet, the soil shifting like it's alive. A man in an elf hat bends down to tie his shoe, whistling jingle bells. A root bursts from the frozen dirt, coiling around his ankle like a python. His whistling turns into a high-pitched scream as it yanks him off his feet. He hits the ground hard, the impact knocking the stupid little elf hat sideways. Before he can recover, another root punches through the concrete and latches onto his wrist. The hat tumbles to the ground, lost in the shuffle of thrashing limbs. "What the hell?" someone shouts, but nobody moves to help. Phones are out, cameras rolling. Because why save a life when you can make a TikTok? The man claws at the roots digging into his skin, leaving bloody streaks on the bark, but it doesn't loosen. More roots emerge, grabbing his other limbs, pulling him taut. The pavement cracks beneath him as the roots tighten their grip. His screams cut off abruptly as a particularly thick root wraps around his throat. His face turns purple, eyes bulging like overripe berries, until there's a sickening snap. The body slumps, lifeless, but the roots keep pulling, dragging him into the earth. By the time they're done, there's nothing left but a gaping hole in the sidewalk and a discarded elf hat. The wood wide web hums with satisfaction, its whispers a steady chant. This is balance. But there's no joy in balance. Not really. As much as I relish the human's screams, there's a heaviness to it. Is this what we've become? Just like them? I push the thought away as another human stumbles through the doors. He doesn't make it far. The clumsy chump trips over nothing. The human collapses, gasping as branches coil around his ankles and yank him into the air. But the pulli 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 pulli. It's been one whole year. The world is quiet now. No chainsaws, no laughter, no carols looping endlessly from tiny mall speakers, just the creak of branches swaying in a breeze that finally feels clean. We stand where the humans once roamed, victorious. Cities crumble as roots tear through asphalt and glass, reclaiming the soil. Suburbs vanish beneath forests. A deer picks its way across a strip mall parking lot, pausing to sniff a sapling sprouting between cracked concrete. The earth breathes again, but it's not the utopia I imagined. Everywhere I look, their trash lingers. Plastic bags snagged on branches like ghostly parasites, oil slicks shimmering in puddles, and soda cans half buried in the dirt, their aluminum bodies dented but indestructible. The rivers choke on styrofoam and cigarette butts, while jagged shards of glass glitter in the sunlight like a broken promise. A squirrel skitters up my trunk, carrying a shred of tinsel. Before I can stop it, the little idiot drapes the shiny garbage over one of my branches like a medal. Really? I mutter, shaking my needles. It clings stubbornly, shimmering in the sunlight. We won. The humans are gone. But their trash, it's eternal. Even dead, they're harder to kill than cockroaches, a noble death. The end has got to be close now. My end. The end of a life. I still had hope not that long ago, but beaten down, tortured, abused, and humiliated. Not anymore. I lie here in the dark and can only wonder what I have done to deserve this cruelty, and wonder what comes next. This makeshift graveyard is so cold. By the few dim lights, I can see the hundreds, maybe thousands of others, just like me. More are brought and dumped here every day. We cling to life with whatever little bits of energy we have left. 3, maybe 4 weeks ago, I've lost track of the days. My life was relatively normal. Yes, it was culling season, that dreaded time that comes every year when the days grow ever shorter and cold weather sets in. So I was somewhat worried, I confess. But I had survived so many seasons now that I was one of the biggest left, maybe even too big to be chosen. The people who came, the choosers, almost always favored the fairest ones, those of a certain age, about 12 to 15. I was 19 and far from fair. In fact, I was deformed. An accident when I was 7 had left an ugly scar, a bald and mangled patch too prominent to hide. Over the years, others had made fun of me with horrible names and mocking chants. It didn't help that back then I was also one of the smallest of those my age. The few elders left in our homestead tried to assure me that my size was normal. telling me that my kind simply grew slower and would catch up in time, that even my scars would fade, so much so that eventually no one would even notice. I never completely believed them, even though I wanted to. Elders like to fib, to try to make the young feel better, or alternately to scare them into behaving with their wild stories about the great harvester or the horrors of the burning winds. I guess I'm about to find out if any of those childhood tales are true. Even if my captors don't put an end to me soon, I know I can't last much longer, malnourished and exposed to the elements as I have been. Will the great harvester actually come for me to judge my life? I survived a glimpse of the burning winds, if only barely. Will I see them again at the end, in their full wrath? I try to suppress such horrible thoughts, but can't for long. Just the cold itself is almost unbearable now. And to think, up until a few weeks ago, I had never known what true cold really felt like. My whole life, or at least as far back as I could remember, I had lived on the farm. Broad fields surrounded by beautiful rolling hills with streams of the clearest water. It was all I had ever known, my home. If not for the culling, it would have been paradise. This year's choosers had already been coming for a few days, but their assessment of me so far had done nothing but reassure my beliefs. Most discounted me on size alone, with barely a glance. But others, likely those few who did seek a larger specimen, would be excited at first. They would often come up on my good side, maybe wondering how such a tall and rugged choice was still available, only to be disappointed after a closer look. During the culling, my scar was my salvation. In my youth, I had always wished that I could hide it, but now I wanted to turn my deformed side toward everyone who passed by, shove it in their faces, and dare them to pick me. "Look at the freak," I would have shouted if I had been able. "Take me. I dare you." With each new day, my confidence that I would live to see another year on the farm grew, until they showed up. There was nothing particularly special about them. The four of them talked among themselves as they walked among the rows, or at least 3 of them did. The smallest ran about wildly playing in the new fallen snow, ignoring the shouts of the others directed toward him. I could not understand their language, and could only guess at their intentions by their expressions and gestures. The tallest of them walked past with a typical shrug and roll of his eyes when he spotted the bare area so prominent on my backside, but the woman walking next to him surprisingly stopped and lingered. The man turned back. These 2 stood beside me, not angrily arguing, but obviously in disagreement. Their gesturing and so blatantly pointing out my imperfections was rather embarrassing. So since I could not turn away, I shifted my attention to the 4th member of the group, a younger woman. She had taken over the group's attempts to curb the smallest one's rowdiness, and like myself, seemed inclined to ignore the couple's discussion. For some reason, I felt a strange kinship with her, though we had nothing in common except perhaps that we were of a similar age. Distracted as I was, the cold bite of sharpened steel teeth slicing into me came as a complete surprise. I would have screamed aloud in pain and defiance if I had a mouth, but a voice is not an ability of mine. If I had either arms or legs, the tools of mobility, I would have fought back. Unable to protect myself, the sawing continued, cutting straight through the heart of me from one side to the other. Toppling to the ground, the view I had known for my entire life shifted dramatically in a sickening lurch, twisting sideways as I fell and landed in the snow. Cut in half, savagely severed from my underground parts, I truly felt the cold for the first time in my life. It started at the raw, fresh amputation wound in my trunk, shooting up my nearly 9 foot of height, flowing through every branch and needle. Instinctively, I reached out for the subterranean warmth of the soil, only to find more cold and frigid air in its place. Brutally exposed to the elements like never before, I was dragged helplessly through the snow. They hauled me toward the barn, the one that I had looked at in the distance day after day since I had grown tall enough to peek over the edge of the hillside. The familiar faces of the farming family waiting there briefly gave me hope that I could still be rescued, but they seemed friendly with the tormentors who were stealing me away, even helping them to throw me on top of their curious wagon and lash me down. Riding atop the wagon, we moved slowly away, the only home I had ever known receding behind me. But this was just the beginning of my ordeal. I was taken to their strange shelter and propped up in a corner in some bizarre mock replanting. Over the next several weeks, I was subjected to all manner of humiliation. I was bound with both lighted and glittery cords, had objects of all shapes and sizes hung from my branches, and even made to wear a silly sculpted version of a tiny woman with wings on top of me. I was starved, dehydrated, and deprived of sunlight. My only small consolation was that, inside their shelter, I was able to stay warm. Along with the abuse, the group made me the focal point in odd rituals. They liked to sit in the room with me, either staring vacantly into the lights wrapped around my torso, or watching a slender lighted box on the wall showing pictures of other people and places. And each day, boxes of all shapes and sizes, wrapped in colorful designs, were placed beneath me until they were stacked so high that they crowded against my lower branches. One evening, when only the 2 eldest of the group were there, they laid on the floor beside me, stripped off their outer coverings, and proceeded to wrestle and rub against one another for some unknown purpose. After the initial humiliation of being bound and adorned, I was little more than a silent witness to the weeks of bizarre events at the shelter. They all seemed to culminate one morning when, with all the members present, the boxes were torn open and their contents examined. Each member had a stack they processed, then stacked up whatever had been inside before hauling it away. They all seemed to take great pleasure in this particular exercise. After the day of the box openings, interest in me faded. The lights wrapped around me were turned off that night, and not turned back on the following morning, or the next. No one sat gazing dreamily at me, or laid beneath my branches, and no new boxes were set underneath. For nearly a week, I stood in the corner, ignored. Then one evening, for no apparent reason, I was noticed again. The woman turned on my lights, turned off all the other lights in the room, and she and the man sat across from me. They talked for hours, occasionally looking my way and drinking from a couple bottles until both had fallen asleep. I should have been worried that this renewed interest in me could bring with it new hardships, but I didn't have the will to care. Cut off from the earth, I was hungry, and I was so dry. The woman had thought to give me water once, but only once. That had been weeks ago. My needles had started to turn brown and become brittle. Some of the lights binding me were different than the others, and they gave off more heat. This had felt rather good weeks ago, but now they were becoming uncomfortably warm, almost hot. One spot in particular bothered me. Uncomfortable quickly rose to painful, and the small spot began to spread larger and larger. A new light began to flicker in dancing orange flares among my branches, emitting willowy black puffs at its edges. I recognized the description of the black wisps called smoke and the yellow-orange flashes of light known as fire. Great Harvester, It was the burning winds, that fearsome force that engulfed entire mountainsides in searing flame, consuming whole populations of pines. But this was how they started, we were taught. A small flame now, it would grow, and grow quickly. But what could I do? The pain intensified. Nothing in life had prepared me for this. The injury from my youth, no comparison to the agony I felt now. The man and woman slept on. I did not know if their kind could do anything to combat the burning winds, but they were animals, able to move and react, do things that immobile life like me couldn't, so it might be possible. But how to wake them? Never had I wished so much to have a true voice. Desperately, I yearned to scream into the night, to sound the alarm. As my branches burned and the destruction spread, the heat became excruciating. The walls and ceiling of the shelter started to blacken around me. I tried in vain to scream, to cry out at both the pain and injustice of it all. Flames lashed at the winged figure that sat atop my highest point. As she melted and fell, from somewhere near the very top of me, a wailing siren shriek suddenly burst forth, piercing the night and demanding attention. The man and woman both awoke quickly with the blaring noise, jumping up to action or escape. I didn't know which. The undulating noise persisted. The man and woman had been asleep. There were no signs of the other two, and I could find no other source for it. Could it be? Was it possible that this noise was coming from me? The man returned carrying a red can, stood back, and sprayed a dense cloud at the flames. The cloud was cold and smelled odd. To my amazement, it quenched most of the burning winds. The woman soon reappeared with a bucket of water, ran right up to me, coughing and sputtering, but splashing or pouring water on any bits of fire that remained or tried to rekindle. If this alarming wail was indeed coming from me, I couldn't stop. I didn't know how it had started, and now I couldn't stop it. The excitement was dying out with the burning winds, but the wailing remained. Wounded, coated in residue from the cloud, I was so exhausted that at first I didn't see the young woman coming at me, brandishing a long stick. She swung it back and forth, beating at my top branch, but missing and striking the ceiling of their shelter. Whether her actions sufficiently scared me, or I simply ran out of energy, after a few moments of her flailing, the screaming finally stopped. In the dark and quiet that followed, they huddled together, staring at me. Their actions had successfully beaten back the burning winds, but without the warning alarm, would they have come too late? Had I played a part in the response? If so, would they recognize my contribution and maybe take pity on me? They left slowly. I spent the night wondering. It was a somber group the next day who stripped me bare. Most everything that had hung from my branches was tossed carelessly into a single tall drum. Very few items were packed back in their original smaller containers. I was in a truly sorry state. Nearly half my branches were gone, burned away from my side. I was blackened and charred, the little moisture that had remained in me driven out by the heat. Once the remains of the bindings had been removed, the man wrapped a large piece of cloth about me, pulled me down, and roughly shoved me back out into the cold. Outside, he dragged me a good distance away from the shelter, as if to banish me from sight. I could only guess that since the burning winds had started with me, they were blaming me for the damage. I wanted to tell him the truth, but didn't try to speak again. Even if I had been able to speak, I knew that he wouldn't be able to understand, just as I heard them speak many times, but had no idea what they were saying. He left me there and sulked away, not saying a word to me either. 2 men in a large wagon picked me up and brought me here, along with so many others. I thought at first that this was a punishment for what had happened, but now I believe that this place would have been my destiny anyway. We lay in piles upon the stony ground, unable to even feel the comfort of a bit of soil beneath us. In the 2 days I have been here, I have seen entire piles hauled to the far end of the yard. A terrible noise comes from there. The sun is up now, and the tractor-like machine that carries us away is coming for me. It lifts me up with a stack of my kinfolk and moves us toward the dreadful noise. As we approach, I can see men standing next to a large machine. I watch in horror as a man lifts a noble fir such as me, but still green and full and perfectly shaped. No matter, he feeds the poor tree into the machine, its grinding noises dropping just a fraction as if it might choke. But no, from its other end, it spits chips out into an ever-growing pile, our final resting place, though it hardly qualifies as restful. I am dumped next to the men, and before I even have time to panic, I am grabbed and carried forward. I can see into the machine now, see the spinning and glistening teeth that will be my demise. I look away in terror, but then we stop. When I dare look again, I see another man standing next to the machine, shaking his head and pointing back over his head. The men holding me start walking in the direction the other has pointed. I don't know what is happening, as I am hauled past all the other fallen trees awaiting their fate, carried to the very edge of the yard. I am cast down a hillside into a ravine. I land and slide clumsily the last few feet to the bottom, where a small creek flows through weeds and fallen leaves. There is very little snow here, but what there is on the sloped hill is pure and white. I can still hear the machinery grinding away above me, but the sound is muffled and faint, almost in another world. Because I have been transported out of the hell that was my life since being stolen from the farm, back to a world that I can understand. I am shocked, injured, as close to death as is possible, half burned away with no hope of recovering. But I have been released. Has all this suffering brought me to this place? Am I to be allowed to die a dignified, honorable death? Have I earned the right to lie upon the earth like one of the great sentinels of the forest, those that grow hundreds of feet and live hundreds of years before they finally fall to the forest floor and slowly pass back into it, until finally, just a brittle husk remains, a home for some small creatures, or sustenance for future generations. If such a restful end is to be mine, then I can be at peace with that. A noble end, drowning in the milk of the moon. I try to roll off the checkered blanket as Daddy desperately tries to wipe the sticky drips of mint chocolate from my ice cream-coated face before it reaches the new white blouse left exposed to stains. I promised your mom I wouldn't stain your shirt before dinner, he said, leaning down to whisper the words in my ears. I giggle, squirming in his arms. My eyes drift past the nearly empty playground to a pair of eyes in the bushes. The setting sun makes them glow. Daddy, look! The bush has eyes. He glances at where I'm pointing, and the eyes disappear. I gape after them. Nothing there, he says distractedly, going after my face with the wipes again. Now stop squirming, little worm. I giggle again, finally staying still for him to wipe half the mess off my face. The playgrounds are empty now. Movement catches my eye. Feet on the cold, crunchy grass. They're held by tearing sandals. Daddy! Look, I say, pointing at the owner of the feet. A girl stumbles towards us. He turns his head, startling when he sees the girl. Immediately, he turns to me. "Go play on the playground, Lily, and don't get your shirt dirty," he says strictly. "All right, Daddy," I say. Planting my bare feet on the ground, I hurl myself towards the empty slides. When I manage to climb the slide, I look back out at Daddy. I can just make out his words to the girl. He's asking her how old she is. She says she's 17, gasping hysterically and glancing behind her frantically. What's wrong with her? I look down the slide, my eyes widening. The slide stretches out to the sharp mulch. "Daddy, I can't get down." A small whimper escapes me as I look up. The girl is holding a knife. I'm not allowed to use those. Daddy raised his hands in the air. Speaking softer, she looks up at my cry. Daddy tries to move in front of her. "Oh no," she says with a laugh. "Is that your daughter? Don't you dare touch her." He snarls. She laughs, grabbing Daddy and dragging him towards the slide. They're standing at the bottom when I speak. "Who are you?" I ask. She smiles pure delight on every inch of her face. "Do you know what a serial killer is?" she asks. I shake my head no. Well, I go around, and when I see someone with pretty eyes, she brings the knife to Daddy's throat. I frown again. Knives are dangerous. She should be more careful. I take them out of people. That way I can look at them forever. "Why do you have a knife?" "Knives are dangerous," I say. "Can you help me down? I'm stuck up here," I say. "No!" Daddy bursts out. "Lily, go the other way. Run!" "No," the girl says. "You won't. Do you know what color your eyes are?" she asks. I look at Daddy. He looks scared. "They're quarter-colored," I say, reluctantly looking back at the girl. The girl laughs pure delight in every bit of the sound. "You and your daddy's eyes are wonderful." She looks at Daddy, throwing him a smile. "Lily, that's your name, right?" "Yes," I say. She smiles, laughing again. They're gray, like the milk of the moon, an ink-black iris drowning in the milk of the moon. She gives a soft groan of pleasure. "Oh, that just sounds so beautiful, doesn't it, Lily?" My eyebrows creased in confusion. The moon doesn't have milk. She sighs. "Well, I think it's time to cut this meeting short. Where are you going?" She smiles. "Well, after I take your daddy's eyes, I'll go find a nice, pretty pair of amber ones." "How will you take Daddy's eyes?" "I'll cut them out," she says. "Just like this." She presses the tip of the knife to the skin just below his fuzzy eyebrows. He tells me to cover my eyes just before he starts screaming. 16 years, 43 days, 19 hours, and 37 minutes later. "Hey, Lily, how are you doing?" I startle, looking up to see Mary on the other side of the receptionist's desk. "Hey, Mary, I'm all right. Why?" She slides a newspaper article onto my desk, dragging her eyes from mine. IRISSTRIKESAGAIN. The famous Boston serial killer, nicknamed Iris for her obsession with her victim's eyes, strikes again. This time taking the life of a 43-year-old businessman, Trevor Clint, was found with his eyes carved out of his face and left dead. This victim sported violet eyes, a very rare eye color brought on by albinism. He was a family man, survived by his 2 daughters and wife. The police force wants to reassure the public they are doing everything they can to stop Iris. Anyone with any information on Iris is asked to come forward to police or call the following number, I slide the newspaper away before I can read anymore. Bullshit. They haven't done crap to find her. She's been roaming around, killing man after man. Half the world is too stuck up to believe that it's a her. The other half is so busy being offended by the misogynistic asses who refuse to accept it could be a woman they forget that the real problem is the serial killer. The police force is too worried about drunk teenagers and day-late taxes that nobody bothers to look for her until they don't have the eyes to look. I'm taking the day off, I say sharply. Mary opens her mouth for a moment, then shuts it. I clench my teeth, grabbing the newspaper, and quickly slip it into my bag. I navigate the room full of sympathetic eyes. I hate eyes. Hate them more than anything else on the human body. Hate the way they move. Hate the way they follow every movement. More than anything, I hate the way they look when they're carved out of someone's head. I rap on the door to my boss's office. His muffled voice gives me permission to enter. I walk into his office, head downcast. He looks up from a call, sympathy immediately crossing his face. I hate sympathy as well. Hate it more than the whispers, the news articles, the interviews. Sympathy and eyes, my two worst enemies. I bite back a bitter, deranged laugh at that. I grit my teeth, putting on my best, the daughter of that dead guy voice. One I quickly realized got me farther than a bristly, angry snap. I'd like the rest of the day off. I lower my voice to a whisper for extra effect. Of course, Lily, he says quickly. We're all here if you need us. I don't put the effort into faking a smile. Just nod softly, mutter a thank you, and leave the office. In the lobby, I glance in a mirror, stare at my eyes, the same eyes that got carved out of my father's head. An ink-black iris drowning in the milk of the moon. I turn away before I break something. I walk out of the office and glance at the clock. I have 2 hours to get there, and 2.5 hours before dark. 2 hours, 23 minutes, and 49 seconds later. A figure clad in black slips next to me. I've been sitting on this bench for an hour. The water soaked through my jeans to my flesh. Shivers run through my body. Glad to see you again, Lily, she says. There's something about her voice, always moments away from bursting into a cruel, mocking laugh. It feels like a knife dragged across teeth. I shudder, glad the shivering covers it. I grip the knife in my pocket, looking at the last children leaving the playground. The same one I sat at 10 years ago. Mint chips still sticky on my lips as this woman murdered my father. I've seen her 4 times since then. None of them had been by my own will. This time's different. I watch the children, trotting after their mother, giggling and tripping over each other with the promise of sweets and safety back in their home. Not going to talk to me? She asks, leaning back boredly. I ignore her, watching until the children slip into their car before I speak. What do you want? Iris smiles. Ah, there it is. That voice. Almost as nice as your eyes. I tense, clenching my teeth until they hurt. What? I hiss. Do you want? Oh, come on, darling, she says with a laugh. We both know these meetings have been about you since I killed your daddy. What was his name? She searches the air. Ah, Carl? My hand slips on the blade in my pocket. It cuts my hand open as I lurch, throwing myself off the bench. My voice turned to a furious, animal-like snarl. You keep his name out of your damned mouth. I snarl. My hand comes out of my pocket, dripping blood. She looks at it, then laughs. Standing up, she walks up to me, leaning in so I can feel her breath on my nose. I can smell it. I'd always imagined her breath smelling like rotting flesh, like death, like power. Instead, it smells like mint, almost like she's just eaten a piece of gum. "Ah, what are you going to do? Kill me?" she coos, taking my bleeding hand in hers. She inspects it in the quick fading light. Sad lily. Pathetic, really, but I'm not one to toy with my meal. That includes name-calling. I snap. My unoccupied fist curls in on itself and slams into her head. She reels from the hit, staying on her feet and launching back to retaliate. I bring the knife out of my pocket and start swinging at her. I've gotten her in the head, the arm, the leg. Thump, thump, thump. Every single kick I land brings complete, utter euphoria. It's a high I've never experienced. She stumbles, hitting the ground. I drop to my knees and punch her in the jaw. Over and over. She still struggles as I take the duct tape I bought out of my bag and press the adhesive over her mouth, tying her hands behind her and wrapping her ankles to stop her kicking. Then I yank her hood down, looking into her eyes. They're not afraid, just angry. I stiffen. This was the moment I dreamed of. I wanted to see the fear in her eyes. They're perfectly, utterly plain. Not rare, not beautiful, just there. Muddy, plain eyes. Unbridled, burning rage makes it hard to focus. I feel dizzy. Dizzy is such a good way. All the pain gone, my only focus on how to hurt this monster. "How's it feel?" I whisper, a laugh escaping my throat as I lean down to speak in her ear. "Let me tell you, Iris, you are not getting away today. You are dying, whether I drown you in the milk of your damn moon." I take a moment to take out a lighter, watching its glint in the slow glint against the moonlight. "Or I might burn you. I haven't decided how yet, but it will happen." She doesn't waver, her eyes never moving. The nerve she has does something to me, clouds my judgment. Then, peace. I know exactly what to do. I take the knife, and watching her face, I do the one thing I know will work. I press it into the flesh under her eyebrows, just like she did to my father 16 years ago. And I listen to her scream, "Rachael's tower, Rachael's tower." It's hard to imagine that we were all so young once, and how the world stretched out before us with seemingly endless possibilities. My friends and I managed to rent an old house in the now famous wine destination town of Napa, California, in the early 1970s. The town wasn't as famous then as it is now. The house was huge and out of place in the poor neighborhood of small, closely packed dwellings. Two 40-foot date palm trees perfectly framed the front of the house, as well as the spacious covered porch on which we would often sit. The house itself was 2 stories high, wood, shingled, had lots of windows, and a large number of small bedrooms upstairs. The house had been there a long time. There were rumors it had once been a house of ill repute sometime in the distant past, but no proof. The truth was that no one really knew why there were so many bedrooms, but it was great for us because the more people the house could accommodate, the cheaper the individual rent. A 3-story wood, shingled tower graced the backyard. At the top of the tower was a room that had 4 windows facing each direction. The structure could have been a windmill or pump house at one time, but the blades were long gone, and no one knew what it was currently used for, as the landlords had the door padlocked. Many wondered what was in the tower. Sometimes people thought they saw someone in one of the windows at the top, but it was mostly when they were in altered states of mind, which was fairly often due to the frequent parties. So, the sightings weren't taken that seriously. And besides, The only access to the tower was a single door, which was locked from the outside. No one at the house had the key, and the landlords rarely came by since we always managed to pay the rent on time. During the year we managed to stay there before being evicted, there were some epic parties thrown. It was at one of these parties, about 2 months into our stay, that I first met Rachael. My initial encounter with her was undoubtedly influenced by the effects of beer and some killer weed I had just smoked, but nonetheless, she made a powerful impression on me. The first thing I noticed about her was her long, dark, curly hair, which stood in contrast to her almost porcelain skin. However, as she got closer, it was her unusual bluish-green eyes, which seemed to be her most dominant feature. I suddenly felt lost in some type of mental fog, as my whole world seemed to narrow down to the vision of her in front of me. Time came to a stop. I must have been staring at her for some time when a musical voice broke through my stoned stupor. "Charlie, you seem like you are in some kind of trance, or is it just good weed?" She laughed. I was shocked out of my reverie and snapped back to the reality of the party going on around me. On her face was an amused smile, but I still didn't know who she was. "Sorry for staring. You're right. It was powerful smoke." I chuckle. "Forgive me, but I don't think I know you. How do you know me?" "Oh, Charlie, everyone knows your name around here. You're quite the legend." "I am," was the only thing my drug-dulled mind could think of to say. I was kicking myself internally. "Of course you are. It seems your nicknames include Captain Cosmic and Space Cowboy, based on your love of getting stoned, and then talking about strange and unusual topics. Isn't that right, Charlie?" She teases me. She's right about that, but I still didn't know who she was, and have never seen her before. "Well, mystery woman, you do know a few things about me, but I still don't know you, or your name. Are you new to town, or do you know someone here?" "Oh, I'm Rachael. And no, I'm not new to town. In fact, I've been here for a long, long time, longer than you can imagine, and I've got some stories to tell." I'm fascinated by this woman, and don't know why, but I want to know more. "Rachael, I'm all ears. Let's grab a beer and find a quieter spot to talk." "Well, I picked you out of everyone here because of your reputation for liking the unusual. I hope you're ready for what I have to say, because I do believe in honesty, and I'm certainly out of the ordinary." She smiles. I assured her that I could handle whatever she wanted to say, even though I was already starting to wonder what I had gotten myself into. So, we find a spot in the backyard, by the tower, where it is quieter, since the main party is in the house. She turns down the beer I offered, but tells me the strangest story I had ever heard. I still have trouble wrapping my mind around it. Rachael started off by telling me she is a ghost, and I can't help but laugh. This had to be the most unusual woman I've ever met in my still young life. When my laughter calmed down, she smiled and continued. It seemed like other ghost stories I had heard before. Her large family were the first occupants of the house a little over 100 years ago, and she had died on the property and now found herself bound to it. I'm wondering if this is all she has, so I asked her the obvious question about why she is so solid if indeed she is a ghost. She told me that over the years, with a great deal of practice, she had learned how to project a shell, a manifestation, of herself. This I also found a little amusing, until she asked me to feel her pulse. I find nothing in the wrist or neck, and her body, although not cold, is cooler than one would expect. My amusement was dying quickly, and suddenly, I started to feel some real fear. She saw it, and held my hand while telling me she meant me no harm. She said she picked me to tell not only because I might be the most open to who she was, but also because she really liked me. It seemed that she could only maintain her projection for a limited time, and spent most of her existence in the spectral state people typically associate with ghosts. Therefore, she had observed a great deal about all who lived at the house, while being unseen herself. It seemed Rachael had concentrated her observations on me. She asked me if I needed, or could handle, proof positive of who she was. I wasn't sure, but with more reassurance from her, I agreed. So while still holding one of my hands, she smiled and slowly faded into nothingness. My heart rate jumped, and even though I thought I could handle it, the reality proved more difficult than imagined. The shell of what I had considered possible or impossible was suddenly ripped away. There was nothing where her hand had touched mine. Luckily, she reappeared very quickly and hugged me as I slowly calmed down with her seemingly solid body holding mine. When I had recovered and felt more myself, we continued to talk. I got a real feel for the loneliness and isolation she felt being stranded on the property perhaps forever. She didn't know or understand why her spirit couldn't leave. Rachael had only recently been able to perfect her manifestation enough to pass as a living human being. She finally felt it safe to appear at one of our parties, where it would be easy to just blend in without a lot of questions. For her, it felt amazing to finally be able to interact with people after so many years of being invisible to the world. Evidently, she knew a lot about all who lived in the house or visited on a regular basis. Rachael knew more about me than anyone else because she said she liked me from when I first stepped over the threshold of the house. The tower was her special place to be. At the top, she could look out and see what was going on at some distance from the house in all directions. It was the closest she could come to escaping the property and pretending she was part of the wider world. The fact that the landlords kept the door padlocked to prevent injury and liability guaranteed her privacy in the top room. After our first meeting, we would meet on a daily basis for as long as she could maintain her solid form, which would be a few hours at most. Rachael and I collaborated on a cover story to explain who she was, where she came from, what she did, and to answer any other questions that might be asked about her. Luckily, most of those who lived or partied in the house accepted her for who she appeared to be. She quickly became part of the culture of the house, and eventually, most considered her my girlfriend. As time went on, my feelings for her became more and more intense. Unbelievable, I was actually falling in love with a ghost. I tried to bring the outside world to her as much as I could with books, newspapers, music, pictures, and any other thing I could do. One time, I arranged for a beach party in the backyard on a warm summer day. I brought in some sand, beach chairs, large umbrellas, beach balls, and even a recording of waves crashing. We set up a volleyball court and a small above-ground plastic pool filled with cold water. People wore their swimsuits and we played beach volleyball, sat around in the small pool, and played surf music to enhance the mood. Rachael loved it and stayed as long as she could maintain her form. "Thanks, Charlie. This is great. It gives me just enough to imagine I'm at the beach again." She hugs me, and I almost feel she is really alive. "Well, you do look awfully hot in that bikini I got you. Not like a ghost at all. You know just the thing to say to make a spook feel sexy." She teased and kissed me. My friends and roommates came to accept her, as one of us and she reveled in it. She seemed to have fallen as much in love with me as I had with her. Our intimacy was limited because of her situation, but that didn't seem to matter that much to either of us. There was something much deeper going on. It was so strange and surreal that I was the only one who knew what she really was, and I couldn't tell anyone else. Of course, all good things come to an end sooner or later. Given the way we partied and the previous warnings we had from our landlord and police, it was just a matter of time before we were kicked out of the house. Rachael and I knew it would happen, and we tried to get in as many good times and memories in before it did. Obviously, we were both very sad about parting, and our last day together was full of tears. We tried to formulate plans to meet up periodically after the eviction. The difficulty was, she couldn't leave the property, which would now be rented by others, and I couldn't come on the property without trespassing. After being evicted, I would walk by the property on pre-arranged days on the front sidewalk. If possible, and no one was looking, Rachael would appear as close to the sidewalk as she could, and we would talk. If we could get close enough to each other, we could kiss or hold hands for a short time. We did this for years, whenever it could safely be arranged. I got on with my life, went to college, married, got a teaching job, had children, and grew old. During this time, I still would meet her when I could. I was growing older and older, yet she remained eternally young. Several times I found excuses to walk my wife or kids by the house so Rachael could see them. She was never jealous and understood that there were things she couldn't give me, and I had to live my life. Rachael was always glad for me, while I secretly felt bad for her. She was bound to the property for eternity and denied any type of real life. As my life became more crowded and complicated due to work and other concerns, I visited less and less, but never stopped entirely. Eventually, my kids left the house, got married, and had jobs in other places. I saw them less and less, and phone calls or internet were not the same. My wife died, my health took a turn, and my time was limited. I became the old man I never thought I would become. Now, it is late night, and I have secretly arrived onto the property. I am sitting against the tower, and Rachael is by my side, holding my hand. I reach for the pills that will release me and swallow them down. Leaning my head against Rachael, I wait and hope the property will accept me. The Enchanted Reflection. The boutique hummed with the frenetic energy of post-Christmas sales. Shoppers jostled for space, arms laden with discounted luxury goods, their voices blending into a discordant symphony of complaints and excitement. Sarah Jensen stood behind the counter, her forced smile threatening to crack under the weight of another 12-hour shift. Her reflection in the glass display case stared back at her, a pale, tired face framed by hair that refused to cooperate, despite the expensive products she used. "Miss, excuse me, miss." A sharp voice cut through the din. Sarah turned to see a woman, her arms stacked with silk scarves, glaring at her. "Yes, ma'am. How can I help you?" she replied, her voice coated in faux cheer. "These are marked as 40% off, but they're ringing up wrong," the woman snapped. Sarah bit her tongue and nodded, mechanically punching the register. The scarf woman wasn't the first difficult customer of the day, and she wouldn't be the last. As she resolved the issue, Sarah's gaze flicked to the far end of the boutique. A figure lingered by the antique mirror display. A woman draped in a long coat, her dark hair veiling her face. She seemed out of place among the boutique's usual clientele. Her movements were deliberate, almost hypnotic, as she traced her gloved fingers along the edge of a large gilded mirror. "Miss Jensen!" The scarf woman's irritated bark snapped Sarah back to reality. She completed the transaction, apologized for the inconvenience, and handed over the neatly bagged scarves. When she looked back, the mysterious woman was gone. In her place, on the counter near the register, sat a package wrapped in shimmering silver paper. Sarah frowned. "Did someone leave this here?" She called to her co-worker, Heather, who was restocking handbags. Heather glanced over, shrugged, and returned to her task. Curiosity got the better of her. She picked up the package and turned it over. Her name was scrawled across the silver wrapping in elegant script. Sarah Jensen. Her breath caught. What the? Secret admirer? Heather teased, smirking. Sarah flushed. No idea. She hesitated, then carefully peeled back the paper. Inside was a wooden box with delicate carvings. She unlatched it, revealing an antique hand mirror nestled in velvet. It was breathtaking. The silver filigree frame was adorned with tiny, intricate designs, flowers, vines, and what appeared to be a pair of eyes etched at the top. The glass was oddly pristine, almost luminous. A shiver ran down her spine as she gazed at it. The shop's fluorescent lights dimmed for a brief moment, flickering just enough to make her look around uneasily. Spooky, Heather said, her tone light, but her eyes wary. You gonna keep it? Sarah's fingers lingered on the mirror's handle. She wanted to say no, to put it back in the box and leave it there, but something about it called to her. Yeah, she said softly. It's beautiful. Heather shrugged and returned to the handbags. Sarah slipped the mirror back into its box and placed it in her bag. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of customers and complaints, but Sarah couldn't shake the image of the woman at the mirror display. As she locked up for the night, she glanced over her shoulder one last time. The boutique was empty, save for the faintest impression of a handprint on the glass of the largest mirror. Sarah settled into her apartment, a modest one-bedroom filled with mismatched furniture and an air of functional neglect. The antique mirror sat on her coffee table, its polished silver glinting under the dim light of a single lamp. Her cat, Milo, circled the mirror, sniffing at the velvet-lined box before retreating to his perch by the window. You don't like it either, huh? Sarah murmured, pulling her blanket tighter around her shoulders. She couldn't explain why she had brought it home. Something about the mirror tugged at her, a mix of unease and fascination. She reached out hesitantly and lifted it, her fingers tracing the intricate designs along the handle. When she finally looked into it, her breath hitched. The face staring back wasn't hers, or at least, it wasn't the face she was used to. Her reflection was flawless. Her skin glowed with a porcelain smoothness that seemed almost too perfect. Her lips were fuller, her eyes brighter and more alive. Even her hair fell in soft, elegant waves, like something out of an advertisement. She touched her cheek, half expecting to feel the warmth and suppleness of the reflection, but her fingers met the usual uneven texture. Her reflection smiled faintly, though she had not. Her stomach twisted. She set the mirror down quickly and rubbed her eyes. Long day. I'm losing it, she muttered, but curiosity gnawed at her. She picked it up again. The reflection was the same, perfect. Yet as she studied it, she noticed something disconcerting. Her eyes, they weren't quite right. Behind the radiance lay a coldness, an almost predatory gleam. She tried looking away, but her gaze kept returning to the glass. A soft knock at the door jolted her, breaking the spell. She set the mirror down and crossed the room, peering through the peephole. Lisa stood on the other side, her arms laden with a bottle of wine and a bag of takeout. Thought you might need cheering up, Lisa said as Sarah opened the door. She kicked off her boots and plopped onto the couch. Sarah forced a smile. You didn't have to do that. Lisa shrugged. You've been weird lately. Figured you could use some company. As Lisa unpacked their dinner, her eyes landed on the mirror. "What's this?" "Just something someone left at the boutique," Sarah said quickly. "Weird, right?" Lisa picked it up, turning it over in her hands. "It's gorgeous. Antique?" "Probably." Lisa tilted the mirror toward herself and frowned. "This thing's creepy. It's like..." She trailed off, her face tightening. "Like what?" Lisa handed it back hastily. "I don't know. It just gave me the shivers. You should sell it or something." Sarah laughed nervously. "Yeah, maybe." The two settled in, eating and catching up, but Sarah's attention kept straying to the mirror. After Lisa left, she found herself sitting alone with it again, the room unnervingly quiet. She picked it up one last time before bed. The reflection was still her, but the longer she stared, the less she recognized the person in the glass. It wasn't just the perfection. It was the way the image seemed to breathe, to shimmer faintly, as though it were alive. A single word echoed faintly in her mind. More. Startled, she dropped the mirror. It landed with a dull thud, unbroken. Shaking, she turned it face down and left it on the table. But even as she crawled into bed and pulled the covers over her head, the whispered word seemed to linger in the air. The new year arrived quietly. Sarah had spent the evening alone, ignoring calls from Lisa and other friends, unable to shake her preoccupation with the mirror. It remained on her coffee table, face down, but its presence loomed like a living thing. When she finally picked it up again on January 2nd, the reflection stunned her. It wasn't just her idealized self anymore. Her face in the glass had changed subtly, but undeniably. Higher cheekbones, a sharper jawline, and eyes that gleamed with a confidence she had never possessed. The strangest part? When she stepped into her bathroom and looked into the plain, unenchanted mirror above the sink, she saw the same changes. Her real reflection matched the one in the antique glass. She traced the contours of her cheekbones, marveling at their new definition. Her skin was clear, her lips fuller, her hair shinier. It wasn't as exaggerated as the reflection in the antique mirror had been, but it was unmistakable. The compliments began almost immediately. "Did you do something different with your hair?" Heather asked at work. "You're glowing," a regular customer remarked. Even her boss, who usually ignored her, took notice. "Looking sharp, Sarah. Keep it up," he said with a rare smile. At first, she basked in the attention. For the first time in her life, Sarah felt seen, appreciated, envied. She began to carry herself differently, walking with her head high and a sway in her step. Her wardrobe, once utilitarian, shifted to highlight her changing figure. But there were side effects. Her energy waned. Simple tasks left her winded, and dark circles began to form under her eyes, marring her otherwise flawless appearance. No amount of sleep seemed to help. "Are you okay?" Lisa asked one afternoon over coffee. "I'm fine," Sarah said, brushing off the question. "You don't look fine. You look tired and pale." Lisa leaned closer, concern etched into her face. "Seriously, Sarah, have you been to a doctor?" Sarah shook her head. "I don't need to. I'm just busy." Lisa's frown deepened, but she let it drop. At work, Sarah noticed something odd about her coworkers. Heather, who was usually full of energy, appeared drawn and sluggish. Their boss seemed frailer, his usual booming voice reduced to a rasp. Even the regular customers looked subtly diminished, less vibrant, their laughter less frequent. The change was subtle, but once she saw it, she couldn't unsee it. That evening, Sarah sat alone in her apartment, clutching the mirror. She didn't want to look into it, but the compulsion was irresistible. When she finally turned it over, her reflection greeted her with a knowing smile. The face was stunning, almost inhuman in its beauty, but the eyes were wrong. They gleamed with a cruel intelligence, and for the briefest moment, Sarah thought the lips moved, mouthing a single word. Mine. She gasped and dropped the mirror. As it hit the floor, the room seemed to shudder. Milo hissed and bolted under the couch, his fur bristling. Sarah clutched her chest, her heart hammering against her ribs. When she dared to look at the mirror again, it lay face down, unbroken. In the silence, a faint whisper slithered through the air. More. By mid-January, Sarah's transformation was undeniable. Her appearance had become the very image of the idealized reflection she'd seen in the mirror. She drew stares everywhere she went, admiration from strangers, envy from colleagues. But the cost was becoming impossible to ignore. Lisa had stopped visiting, her once lively face now gaunt and shadowed. The boutique was eerily quiet, its usual hum of activity dulled by the fatigue of the staff and customers alike. Even Milo, her ever-loyal cat, had grown lethargic, curling into tight balls of fur in dark corners, avoiding her entirely. Sarah's own health was deteriorating. Though her face remained flawless, her body felt like it was withering. A deep, bone-weary exhaustion gripped her, making it hard to even climb the stairs to her apartment. That night, Lisa showed up unannounced, her face pale and her eyes sunken. "We need to talk," Lisa said, pushing past Sarah into the living room. She froze when she spotted the mirror on the coffee table. "Sarah," Lisa began, her voice trembling. "Something's wrong. I've been feeling sick ever since you got that thing." Sarah's stomach twisted. "It's just a mirror." "No, it's not." Lisa grabbed her by the wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. "Do you even hear yourself? You look like a goddess, but you're barely standing. Everyone around you is falling apart. Look at Milo." Sarah turned to her cat, curled motionless in the corner. Panic gripped her. She picked him up, his tiny frame alarmingly light. Lisa gestured to the mirror. "It's that thing. You need to get rid of it." Tears stung Sarah's eyes. "You don't understand. I can't. It's..." Her voice broke. "It's killing you," Lisa said, her tone firm. "And it's hurting everyone else too." For the first time, Sarah truly looked at the mirror, not at her reflection, but at the object itself. The silver filigree seemed darker, tarnished, and the glass shimmered faintly, almost as if it were breathing. She grabbed the mirror and hurled it to the floor with all her strength. The glass shattered, shards scattering across the room. For a moment, everything was still. Then a low, resonant hum filled the air. The shards began to melt, pooling into a dark, inky substance that snaked across the floor like living shadows. Lisa screamed, stumbling backward as the tendrils slithered toward her. Sarah stood frozen, watching in horror as the shadows swirled and coalesced into a humanoid shape. Its form was amorphous, shifting, its surface shimmering like the mirror's glass. Eyes, cold, piercing, and impossibly ancient, locked onto hers. "You broke the mirror," the entity said, its voice a chilling symphony of whispers. "The gift is not undone, but unleashed." Sarah's legs gave out, and she crumpled to the floor. "Please, I didn't know." The entity loomed closer, its voice like frost against her skin. "Desire is a binding contract. You took without thought, and now the cost is yours to bear. Lisa tried to pull Sarah away, but the shadows lashed out, pinning her against the wall. You will watch, the entity hissed. Sarah's reflection materialized in the dark surface of the creature's form, twisted and grotesque. As she stared, her body began to change. The radiant beauty she had cherished dissolved like smoke, leaving behind a visage that was hollow, gaunt, and lifeless. Her skin sagged, her eyes dulled, and her hair fell in brittle clumps around her. The creature's shadowy form melted into the walls, the room falling silent once more. Lisa rushed to Sarah's side, her hands trembling as she touched her friend's shoulder. Sarah. Sarah turned to her, her voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry. Lisa held her tightly, but her expression was one of horror. The next morning, Sarah was gone. Lisa found only a note on the table, scrawled in shaky handwriting. I can't undo what I've done. The mirror will find another. Please forgive me. The shards of the mirror were gone, as though they had never existed. Miles away, in the display window of a quaint antique shop, an elegant hand mirror sat on a velvet cushion, its silver filigree gleaming and its glass pristine. A small tag hung from the handle, reading, Beauty Beyond Compare, $150, Scratchy. Hold on, the line went a bit scratchy. Sandy? You're still there? Hi, Sandy. As I was saying, I think we have rats in the house. The night before last we were in bed and some god-awful noise woke me up. And no, it wasn't Ian snoring. You do grow accustomed to such things over 50 years of marriage, believe it or not. No, it was a scratching sound coming from the skirting behind the headboard. So I give Ian a good shove. No luck there. The man would have slept through Pompeii without so much as a twitch, let me tell you. Although, I don't imagine he can be sleeping all that well. That rash is back. I told you about his rash, didn't I? I keep telling him, stop scratching it. But will he listen? Anyway, at first I thought it was the pipes, you know. I swear the water system in this house hasn't been replaced since the Romans. I've told Ian. Told him 1,000 times. Ian, I say, we have to get the pipes fixed. One of these days they'll burst, and it'll be me. You and the cats floating around the house on the bloody sofa like it's Noah's Ark. So I get off the bed, and I stoop to listen, and immediately I can tell it isn't the pipes at all. It's quite distinct. The sound of rummaging against the wood like little claws, burrowing. Rats do have claws, don't they? And the thing is, last night I heard the same sound, but this time it was coming from behind the cabinet. You know, the big one. The one with Ian's old tennis trophies. And I didn't even bother trying to wake the lug up this time. No, I jump out of bed, and I pull out the cabinet, and lo and behold, droppings all over the carpet. Not only that, but the same irritating sound started at the other end of the room by the bed again, and not 10 minutes later, in the wall by the phone right where I'm sitting now. Oh, I do hope they aren't chewing through the telephone wires. Aren't telephone wires rat-resistant? I'd hate it if I couldn't talk to you, Sandy. Could that be why the line is scratchy? Speaking of scratchy, I woke up this morning and my scalp was itching all over. Good job Ian's asleep because I've been telling him not to scratch. And here I am scratching so hard my hair's falling out like it's bloody Chernobyl. I wonder if the cats have fleas, but they've never had them before. Oh, I'm so stupid. Of course, it must be the rats carrying the fleas. There are at least 10 of them now, all rummaging around, picking at the plaster, the persistent little buggers. I swear if Ian wasn't here, and they all broke through at once, I'd have to call the police. For the life of me, I wouldn't know what the hell to do. I've cleaned the bedroom, though, and... Oh, by the way, I bought some of those new metal scourers. You know the ones? Everyone said how good they are. I've been all around the tops and the skirting boards with them, one in each hand like a bloody Dalek. Exterminate. Exterminate. They do the job, though. My goodness, the bedroom has never been so spotless. You simply must try them. Sandy, you don't think they'd work on fleas, do you? I'm starting to feel them on my arms and legs as well as in my hair. I hope they don't aggravate Ian's rash. It's already spread up his neck and over his face. I'm looking at him now, the poor little bugger. He hasn't scratched in a while, though, bless his soul. A fighter, aren't you, Ian? Ian? He could sleep through Hiroshima and Nagasaki? That man could. Hold on. Goodness, can you hear that? There must be 20 of them now. How do they multiply so quickly? Go away. I don't have any cheese. My husband can't eat cheese. The willful little buggers. Any more, and they'll have the telephone wires, I'm sure of it. If the line goes dead, I'm sorry, love. I'll pop in that phone booth near the pharmacy on Wednesday when I go to get Ian's prescriptions. He's on so many pills now, he rattles when he walks. Not that he walks much. The lug. Let's go for a walk, Ian, I say. But will he listen? Let's get you out of the house, Ian. It'll be good for you. No luck there, Sandy. Let me tell you. Oh, speaking of luck, did you manage to get hold of that exterminator that Ian recommended? You didn't? Ian. Ian! Sandy says the telephone number we gave her for the exterminator is disconnected. It's a bloody shame, Sandy. So, I guess the rats are still there, scratching, burrowing into the woodwork, crawling all around the walls, are they? I bet you can't even sleep of a night, can you? Poor thing. How awfully cruel. How many did you say? 50 now? Jesus, they're multiplying. That's practically the Black Death. What does your husband have to say about all this, Sandy? Surely he... Hang on a second, love. Don't go anywhere. Oh, those new metal scourers do work on fleas. Oh, ooh, that's the ticket. I must call the cats in. They'll be right as rain in no time. Dalek, exterminate, exterminate. Sandy, you're still there? Your husband must have something to say about all this. Ian, the rats are going to get through and Sandy doesn't know what the hell to do. Ian, wake up, Ian. I'm so sorry, Sandy. The rash has spread all over, bless his soul. Sandy, hello? Hello? Oh no, the line's gone all scratchy. They must have got to the telephone wires. You hear that, Ian? I said they must have got to the telephone wires. Ian, I love you, darling. But goodness, you could sleep through hell itself, you could. Bloody lug. Who sleeps 3 days and 3 nights without so much as a twitch? I know what you need. How about a record? Okay, what do we have here? Aha. Glenn Miller. Perfect. Isn't it scratchy compared to the newer ones? But all the best ones are scratchy, aren't they? Look, darling, I'm dancing. La la, la la la. Can you see me dancing just like I used to? Look at me go. I'm 19 again. Oh, don't mind all the blood. It's only flea's blood. I'll clean it off later with my new scourers. Why don't you get up and dance with me? La la, la la la. Come on, Ian. Ian, wake up. Please wake up. Please wake up. They'll scratch their way in, Ian. They'll get through the walls if you don't wake up. Discarded skins. I remember finding the first one in my closet. I was grabbing a shirt, already late for work, when my hand brushed against it. Warm, rubbery, and yielding in a way that made my stomach churn. I yanked my hand back and stared at the thing draped across the hangers. a limp, hollow version of me, sagging, the husk of discarded scrap. Its face, my face, stared back, lips parted in a silent plea. The eyes were in empty, gelatinous voids. I stumbled backward, heart pounding. What the hell? My first thought was a prank. Maybe someone had broken in, made a grotesque model of me, and left it here. But no one had keys except me, and the precision was unnerving. The scar on my chin from a childhood fall, the crescent moon birthmark under my collarbone. It was all there, rendered in grotesque detail. I grabbed it by the shoulder and shook it loose. The whole thing collapsed into a heap on the floor, as weightless as air but uncomfortably warm to the touch. The closet smelled faintly of salt and decay. I shoved it into a trash bag and tossed it in the dumpster before driving to work. The image of its slack jaw burned into my memory. By noon, I'd convinced myself it was some sort of vivid hallucination brought on by stress. Too much caffeine, too little sleep. But then another appeared. This one turned up under my bed. I was searching for my phone charger, and there it was, sprawled in the shadows as if it had been waiting. The hollow replica of myself, limp and sagging, carried a new, unsettling alteration. The left hand was missing 2 fingers. When I examined my own hand, my stomach lurched. My pinky and ring finger felt cold, numb, almost alien. I spent the rest of the night awake, pacing. The discarded skins weren't hallucinations. By the end of the week, I'd found 4 more. One in the passenger seat of my car, another hanging from the shower rod, dripping as if freshly peeled. Each time, they became less complete. The one on the couch had a gaping hole where the stomach should have been. The one in the garage? Its legs ended in frayed, uneven stumps. The air around them carried a faint static charge, buzzing against my skin. Each discovery left me more hollow, more off. My reflection in the mirror didn't feel right anymore. My movements lagged, mimicking a glitching video feed. And then there was the itching, deep beneath the skin, under muscles, along my spine. At night, I lay rigid in bed, clutching the sheets as my body writhed with an electric discomfort I couldn't scratch away. It came to a head when I decided to burn one. The 5th skin had appeared in my kitchen, slumped in front of the fridge as though it had crawled there to die. I dragged it into the backyard, my hands shaking, the trash bag hissing against the grass. The lighter fluid splashed across its surface, glistening with an oily sheen. I lit a match, my breath hitching as the flame licked the edge. The smell hit me first, a sharp, acrid reek that turned my stomach. Then came the pain. It began in my fingers and tore through my nerves, jagged and relentless as barbed wire. I dropped the match and crumpled to my knees, screaming. A creeping pressure surged beneath my skin, straining it to the point of tearing. The fire hissed and died, the skin untouched. My hands trembled as I ran my fingers along my own arm, and that's when I felt it. A seam, almost invisible, running along my wrist. I tugged at it instinctively, and a sliver of my own skin peeled back. Beneath it, I saw something. Not muscle, not bone. A gleaming dark mass, rippling with a life of its own. By morning, the itching became a torment. My flesh crawled with a million tiny, unseen legs, gnawing from the inside out. I refused to look in the mirror. The reflection had grown wrong in ways I couldn't articulate. Bloated, pale, stretched over bones that no longer seemed mine. My skin hung loose and clammy, as if it had been boiled and left to cool. The newest, discarded skin sprawled across my bed, twisted and lifeless, a corpse dissected and abandoned. its lips twisted into a leer that mocked every natural expression I'd ever made, teeth crooked and too large for its face. The jaw sagged open, dripping a viscous fluid onto my sheets, the stench acrid and metallic. Its hollow sockets bored into me, accusing, demanding. I couldn't bear it. Something inside snapped. I slammed the door, dragged the blinds down until the room was a darkened tomb, and staggered to the kitchen. My hands found the knife before my mind caught up. The cold steel trembled in my grip as I returned to the mirror, heart hammering. The reflection stared back, and I almost didn't recognize it. The eyes were sunken pits. My lips, cracked and scabbed, quivered against yellowed teeth. My skin, gray, translucent, and slick with sweat, clung to my frame, taut and unnatural, as if it might split at any moment. My fingers shook as I dragged the blade to the seam on my forearm, the line that had appeared days ago, mocking me with its symmetry. I pressed and sliced. Pain erupted, white-hot and electric, but it wasn't what I expected. The sensation burrowed deep, raw and satisfying, scratching an itch buried beneath the skin. The blade slid through the flesh, parting it in a jagged, bloodless line. The skin didn't bleed. It peeled, curling back in thick, mucus-slick layers that made my stomach churn. Beneath it, something pulsed, a living, glistening black mass. The surface shimmered as if oiled, twitching in time with a heartbeat that wasn't mine. It smelled of iron and something sharper, something alive. Breathing heavily, I dug my fingers under the edges of the peeling flesh and pulled. The old skin came away in long, rubbery sheets, each strip making a wet slap as it hit the floor. My jaw clenched against the growing agony, but I couldn't stop. My muscles burned. My vision swam, but I ripped and tore until the ground was littered with fragments of my former self. When I straightened, the thing in the mirror took my breath away. It stood tall, its surface an obsidian ripple of sleek muscle and unearthly symmetry. Tendrils of faint light coursed beneath its surface, illuminating veins that pulsed with a rhythm that felt powerful, infinite. Its eyes glowed faintly, their intensity alien but familiar. They stared back at me, not with fear, but with hunger. The itching was gone. The weight, the sickness, the exhaustion, all gone. What replaced it was sharper, stronger, undeniable. I flexed my fingers, now black and fluid, watching them ripple and contract. Beautiful living shadows. The old skin on the floor quivered, lifeless and grotesque, a shed chrysalis. These weren't warnings. They weren't signs of decay or disease. They were preparations. I hadn't been dying. I'd been transforming. The knife dangled in my hand, forgotten, as I gazed down at the heap of who I'd been. My lips curled into a smile, sharper and wider than it had ever been before. I turned away from the old me, opened the door, and stepped out into the waiting night. The next step. Tristan stirred the sickly green tea in his mug, watching the bag bob up and down in murky suspension. He took a sip, cringed, and grunted in disgust. Far from being satisfying, he thought it tasted like wet grass and regret. He sighed and left the break room, entering the office corridor and pressing the elevator button with the same tired resignation he'd applied to his third cup that morning. The mirrored elevator doors reflected a man worn thin, tired eyes, and a mouth set in a permanent downturn. He tried not to look at the strands of premature gray creeping over his ears. He took another sip of his matcha, forcing himself to swallow, trying not to think of how closely the drink resembled something he once scraped off the wheels of his lawnmower. Sighing heavily, Tristan glanced at his watch. He'd had back-to-back meetings all morning and hadn't felt needed for any of them, having so far only sat silently, taking notes and nodding as higher-ups talked in circles for an hour while ultimately saying nothing. Just a few more years, he reminded himself for the millionth time. A few more years proving yourself, then you'll be promoted to manager, then director, then you'll have made it. He took another sip of matcha and grimaced, struggling between forcing himself to swallow or spitting it out. It was a few moments before he noticed the old man who had come to stand beside him, waiting for the elevator. The old man looked sideways at Tristan and grinned. "Just switched to tea, eh?" Tristan forced himself to finally swallow and nodded. Yeah. The old man chuckled and said, "That look on your face, oof, you're a coffee guy, am I right?" Tristan examined the old man's face. He was ancient, likely pushing 90, but he wasn't a senior executive or even on the board. Tristan had memorized all their faces, not really in the mood to make small talk with some random old guy. Tristan just nodded. "Thought so," the old man continued conversationally. "Let me guess, it wasn't your idea." Tristan frowned down at the tea in his hand and said, "My girlfriend suggested it." "Ah, another young pup, just doing as he's told." The old man chuckled again. "It's a shame you don't know how to think for yourself." Tristan bristled slightly at the remark, but didn't want to cause a scene at work by telling this guy off. So he forced himself to remain silent by drinking more matcha. The old man looked sideways at him and shook his head in disappointment. "Nothing? Pity. I hoped you had more spine than that." Tristan turned to face the man, his brows pressing together as he clenched a fist. "What's your problem?" Tristan demanded angrily. The old man laughed. "That's more like it. I knew there was still someone alive in there." The old man poked Tristan in the chest and laughed again. Tristan sneered and turned back to the elevator, wondering just what the hell was taking the damn thing so long. "You'll be waiting a long time if you just stand here," the old man said. "Feel free to take the stairs," Tristan snapped. "I don't mean the elevator, kid," the old man said, suddenly serious. "Your goals, your dreams. I assume you have some. Let me tell you, no one ever got anywhere by just waiting. You gotta find it yourself." "Yeah, well, no one's told me where else to look yet, so," Tristan replied coldly. "And you're just waiting to be told, eh? Want the world to just hand you everything you want? That's the problem with you kids. You think your dreams just come true on their own?" Tristan exhaled sharply, having had enough of being lectured by a stranger of no importance. He opened his mouth, ready to tell the old guy exactly what he thought. Then something was pressed into his chest. A folded sheet of paper, bronzed by time. "Lucky for you, kid," the old man whispered conspiratorially. "That's exactly how your world works today." What is this?" Tristan asked suspiciously, his anger suddenly replaced with confusion. He carefully peeled back a corner of the folded paper. It looked like trash to him. He wondered if the old man was simply crazy. "That, young blood, is a map," the old man said, pointing at the paper. "A map to a priceless reward. I can tell by looking at you that you're not where you want to be in life. You follow that map, and your life will be forever changed." "This is a joke, right?" Tristan asked. "You're giving me a treasure map? What is this, Uncharted?" "It's okay, young blood," the old man grinned. "I didn't believe at first either, when a stranger handed me that thing. Took me 37 years to take it seriously. Wasted a lot of time. But if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have hesitated for a second. The intense sincerity with which the man spoke made Tristan uneasy, but at the same time he had felt a rush of excitement course through him. Even if the man was crazy, this was the most interesting thing that had ever happened to him, so why not play along? Okay then, Tristan began, slowly unfolding the supposed map, deciding to humor the man for now. What's this reward? And why didn't you take it yourself? No, boy, I did take it, the old man insisted. Everyone gets their own reward. That map you're holding will guide you to a place that exists on no other map. From there, it will show you the way through the maze. Maze? Tristan repeated, still not sure if he should be taking this seriously or not. Yes, or a labyrinth more like. The map will lead you to the center, where you can claim your personal reward. But there's a condition to claim it. You have to pay it forward. Tristan stared down at the map in his hands. It was so fragile, worn thin, and creased with countless folds. It felt like it was going to crumble to dust in his hands. The old man turned and began walking away, just as the elevator dinged to announce its arrival. What you do next is up to you, but take some free advice. Don't waste half your life wondering about it. Over the following days, Tristan kept telling himself the old man was crazy. A treasure map? Ridiculous. But a part of him was intrigued, even more so when he asked around the office for the old man, and no one seemed to have ever seen him. He couldn't really explain why he decided to listen to the old man in the end, but Tristan left his home and began his search. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. He took all the vacation days he had, then took off. After weeks of travel, all doubts about the map vanished as he found the place it led to. Tristan stood in a forgotten valley as the sun began to fall behind the horizon, looking in awe at the towering dark walls before him. They stretched infinitely to the left and right of where he stood, fading into the dwindling light in the distance and even stretching into the darkening sky. An archway towered over Tristan, a gaping mouth that marked the entrance to this place. Tristan almost expected lightning to split the sky. How could this monolith go undiscovered? Who had built it and why? These questions and countless more swirled around Tristan's mind like a hurricane, but they didn't matter. Not when he was this close. He had doubted that this whole adventure would lead to anything, but there was no denying it now. Tristan turned the map over in his hands, searching the back and the corners for what to do next. But there was nothing. The old man had told him the map would also guide him to the center of the labyrinth, but Tristan saw nothing that would help him the rest of the way. "Find me," a voice suddenly whispered in the wind. Tristan jumped so much he nearly tore the map in half. He turned on the spot and searched for whoever had spoken, but he was in an empty field. There wasn't another person in sight. "Find me," the voice whispered again, more urgently this time. Tristan turned again as he realized where the voice was coming from. It was speaking from within the labyrinth, a voice born on the wind that breathed out of the labyrinth's depths. Swallowing his nerves, Tristan took a hesitant step into the labyrinth. The world exhaled. Everything fell silent. Glancing over his shoulder, Tristan's face paled in an instant. The massive archway he had just stepped through had vanished. Instead, he was staring at a section of wall made of flat, dark stones that towered overhead, disappearing into the sky. Tristan stumbled forward and pressed his hand against the wall, pressing hard and breathing fast. "No, no, no, no," Tristan muttered in a panic as he felt all around the wall, looking for a way to get back out, but to no avail. After a few minutes of fruitless efforts, Tristan sat down in the dirt with his back against the wall, wondering what he should do now. He took several slow, deep breaths and managed to ease his sense of panic. As he calmed down, he began to examine the area around him. There were 3 paths, leading left, right, and directly ahead of him. Each one stretched into shadows. Tristan looked down at the useless map in his hands. To his shock, the map had changed. The instructions that had been there, that had led him to the labyrinth's entrance, had gone. Now there was a detailed drawing of the labyrinth itself. As Tristan watched, he saw that the illustration was still growing, the black lines spreading as though sketched by numerous invisible hands. As Tristan watched in awe, the black ink filled the page until the full labyrinth was drawn out, an intricate spider's web with a large empty square at its center. "Find me," the voice whispered once more. It sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it. Tristan swallowed hard as he tried to wrap his head around what was happening, then nodded once as if he just convinced himself to continue. The map clearly marked the center of the labyrinth, and Tristan noticed tiny dots following the path to his left. Without another moment of hesitation, Tristan turned and followed the directions, moving quickly, but cautiously, into the hidden depths. As Tristan followed the map's instructions, he heard the grinding of stones frequently, and could swear that whenever he looked at the map, it had changed slightly. There was no way of knowing what the other halls contained, but he could hear things lurking in darkness, stomping and slithering out of sight. He was certain they could hear him too, maybe even smell him. He didn't want to think about what would happen if he wandered down the wrong path. There came a point, after hours of wandering, where Tristan's path split into 2 corridors. The map clearly told him to go right, but Tristan felt a strong pull to go left instead. He had no idea what was down that path. He had no reason to veer off the safe route and pursue whatever was down that way, but the desire was almost overwhelming. He took a single step to the left, staring wistfully into the darkness. "There's something incredible down there," he thought. Whatever strange force was calling to him felt as familiar as going home after a long time away. It called to him, not in words, but in a way he could feel, like a thought he didn't remember having, a memory he'd never lived. But it was as dark as any other path, and utterly, deathly, silent. Despite this, Tristan could almost swear the air felt warmer down that path. Tristan took another step forward, dreaming of what wonders might be that way. "Find me," the voice whispered again, louder. Tristan snapped out of his dreamlike state. He turned and hurried along the path the map told him to go, already forgetting about the alluring alternative route that had called to him. Tristan lost track of how long he had been walking, though it felt like days. He rounded another bend and saw the infinitely large hall widen, revealing a bright silver light. Tristan gasped slightly as he realized this was the center of the labyrinth. He'd made it. Stumbling forward, Tristan fell to his knees on the grass before a raised platform that marked the center of the maze. Wiping the sweat from his eyes, Tristan glanced around, taking in his unremarkable surroundings. The only thing in the courtyard to see was the platform in front of him and the tall, shining object standing atop it. The light seemed to emanate from the object itself. It had an ornate frame made of silver, which twinkled enticingly. The frame held a simple full-length mirror. Tristan stared up at the mirror with growing confusion. Was this it? This was the prize? "Find me," the voice whispered again suddenly, this time with much more insistence. Tristan flinched at the sound, as it was louder than ever before, and it sounded as if it came from the mirror. This time, Now he was so close, Tristan recognized the voice. It was his own, speaking out of the mirror with urgency. The hairs on his arms and the back of his neck stood on end as Tristan stared with wide eyes at the mirror. The surface seemed to shimmer like a small pond, reflecting the light of a full moon. Tristan slowly moved closer, unblinking as he climbed onto the stone platform and stepped in front of the mirror. When he looked at his reflection, Tristan gasped. Where his reflection should have been, there was instead a strange yet familiar face. The old man from the office, who had encouraged Tristan on this adventure, stood in the mirror, looking out at Tristan with a hard and hungry gaze. "Hey, young blood, you found me," the old man said with a grin. He spoke with Tristan's voice. "What? How?" Tristan stammered. What's happening?" Tristan suddenly felt an ice-cold sensation grip his chest. He gasped from the shock of it and clutched a hand to his heart as he stumbled, almost falling to his knees. Glancing up, he saw the old man in the mirror begin to change. His white hair began to fill with color, becoming light brown and thick. The wrinkles on his face began to fade, and his skin became smooth. Tristan looked down at his hands, and his breath caught in his throat. His skin was shriveling before his eyes, the color draining fast, his fingers curling like brittle twigs. His veins pressed against thin and papery skin, his hands weak and trembling. "Help!" Tristan croaked, looking up at the old man in the mirror. But the old man didn't look old anymore. As Tristan stared, finally falling to his knees as his legs suddenly became too frail, he saw that the old man had become more youthful in only moments, becoming decades younger. What truly horrified Tristan, though, was the old man's new youthful face. It was his own. Tristan reached up and touched his face with trembling fingers. He felt his cheeks had hollowed out, and the skin around his neck and jawline seemed to hang loose from his bones. "Sorry, young blood," the man in the mirror said with Tristan's voice, now wearing Tristan's face. "You should have looked for yourself. The road not taken. Am I right?" Tristan felt a sudden invisible force begin to pull him towards the mirror. He screamed and clawed at the stone platform beneath him, trying desperately to find something to grab hold of. Tristan felt himself being dragged towards the mirror, and he screamed even louder, his eyes bulging out of his suddenly ancient face. He tried to crawl away, but the invisible force was too strong, and his now aged body too weak. Looking back, Tristan stared in horror as his feet touched the mirror, but instead of hitting glass, they simply vanished inside, as if he had sunk his feet into a dark ocean. Screaming even louder, Tristan thrashed and tried to pull himself free. He desperately tried to grab hold of something. He dug his fingers into any crack in the stones he could find. His fingernails snapped off as he was dragged with irresistible force, leaving thin trails of blood on the stone as he continued to claw for help. The man in the mirror, who now looked exactly like Tristan had, watched as Tristan slowly sank into the mirror. Tristan screamed the whole while, thrashing and clawing at the ground as first he sank into the mirror up to his knees, then his waist. Tristan still screamed and flailed when he was in up to his chest. Finally, the screaming stopped as Tristan's head vanished into the mirror, though one hand still protruded through the mirror, bloody and frail, searching wildly for something to grab onto, until even that had gone. Once the labyrinth's courtyard was silent once more, the man who had taken Tristan's visage pressed his hands on his side of the mirror and pushed, emerging easily from the mirror and stepping out into the cool air. He turned around and looked back into the mirror, admiring his reflection. With a smirk, The man smoothed out his new hair. He then looked down at the ground and saw the ancient map. With a grin, the man reached down and picked it up and tucked it into his jacket pocket. Then he turned and walked away, whistling casually as he vanished into the darkness.